Rudo was just another poor bastard living in the slums, regularly breaking into the rich folks' junkyards to swipe anything remotely useful. But when he's falsely accused of murdering his foster father and chucked into the pit where all the world's garbage gets dumped, he finds himself battling monstrous piles of trash to claw his way back up and get some sweet revenge. Then we see the world he lives in is one hell of a divided place. On one side, there's the pristine, picture-perfect city where the rich assholes lounge around, living their best damn lives. On the other, there's the filthy slums, home to folks like Rudo. The one thing these two places share is the pit, a festering dump for garbage and criminals alike. The rich toss away barely damaged items without batting an eye, like the snobby mother who casually instructs her daughter to chuck a puppy toy she literally just bought because it got a tiny scratch. She coldly tells the kid they'll just buy a new one, because God forbid something looks slightly imperfect. The daughter agrees, and her mom heartlessly tosses the toy puppy into a garbage chute, sending it straight down to a truck parked in an underground tunnel headed to the massive trash heap. Little do they know, young Rudo is already lurking around down there, eyeballing whatever goodies these spoiled brats have tossed out. Sneaking into the trash collection area, Rudo slips into one of the storage rooms, but his luck sucks as usual. A nosy-ass guard hears a suspicious noise and immediately bursts in to catch him digging through the trash. Pointing his gun at Rudo, the guard starts shouting, calling him a filthy degenerate who's ruining the city's beauty by hoarding garbage. Rudo doesn't even flinch, having heard worse insults every freaking Sunday. The guard sounds the alarm, and reinforcements arrive in no time. Fed up, Rudo hurls bags of garbage at them, and these neat freak guards completely lose their minds at the sight of some raw eggs staining their precious uniforms, freezing up uselessly as Rudo scrambles up the vent and escapes. Rudo pops out of the vent close to the exit, but of course the gate slams shut right in his face, and more guards flood in, guns blazing. But Rudo effortlessly dodges their bullets like a Parker expert, then charges straight toward the exit, and he stays perfectly safe because the guards clearly sucks at shooting. Just as he's about to leap over the wall, one lucky shot grazes his arm, pissing him off even more, but he's already out of sight before they can catch him. As the dumb guards waste their time searching for him, Rudo climbs out of a sewer hole, cursing under his breath about the sheer stupidity of guarding literal garbage that nobody else even wants. The following morning, word about the damn garbage thief spreads like wildfire through the city, and of course, all the rich assholes instantly blame it on the slum folks. On the other side of the wall, though, the slum dwellers know exactly who's responsible because this ain't Rudo's first time dumpster diving. Hell, half of them secretly hope he finally gets caught just so he'll stop dragging their reputation deeper into the shitter. Rudo couldn't care less about their opinions though as he sets up shop, proudly displaying all the fixed-up junk he scavenged. Just then, his friend Chaiwa storms over, pissed off, demanding to know why the hell he risks his neck for a bunch of city people's garbage. He shrugs her off, telling her those rich bastards toss away perfectly good stuff like it's nothing, so he feels sorry for the poor things and figures if he can make some cash off them, that's just a bonus. Chua seems to get it, but right then, 3 little asshats show up, dramatically pinching their noses and complaining loudly that something reeks worse than a sewer around here. They warn Chua to stay clear of Rudo or else she'll smell just as bad. They roast Rudo's thick black gloves, saying he probably hasn't washed the nasty things since the days of the dinosaurs, and joke that just one touch from those disgusting mitts would give someone a lifetime of rashes. One kid takes it further, kicking over the lantern Rudo had just fixed, sneering that no one in their right mind would buy that piece of junk. Then the little brat mocks Rudo's hands themselves, calling them even creepier than his crusty gloves, and saying that's exactly why he keeps them covered. Rudo silently endures the roast session, but the second one of them crosses the line by calling him a murderer's son. His patience snaps, and his eyes flare with sudden rage. Yet they keep running their mouths, saying the slums were built to cage criminals and all the residents here are just their messed up descendants. That's why most slum dwellers try so hard to keep their reputation clean, and Rudo's foster father tarnished that reputation by committing murder. At that point, Rudo unleashes a death glare so intense, the kids damn near shit themselves, scrambling away while shouting insults from a safe distance, claiming Rudo will end up just like his father. Rudo just quietly gets back to fixing the lantern, and Choa steps closer, softly reassuring him that she knows deep down he's a good guy and nothing like his father. Rudo immediately gets awkward and red-faced at the compliment, but before he can even stutter out a thank you, Choa's eyes catch sight of the puppy toy he grabbed from the dump last night. Turns out he picked it specifically as a gift for her, hoping to finally level up his pathetic-ass charisma stat. But just as he's about to hand it over, Choa's mom storms in, interrupting his moment and dragging Chaiwa away before he can complete his cute mission. After that awkward-ass moment, Rudo heads back home only to find his adoptive dad Ragto chilling there waiting for him. Ragto immediately starts clowning him, perfectly mimicking Rudo's nervous fumbling when he tried handing Chaiwa the puppy. Rudo goes bright red, embarrassed as shit because he had no clue Ragto was watching the entire disaster unfold. Ragto laughs it off and says they'll discuss his pathetic love life later, but first he needs to talk about Rudo's latest junkyard adventure. Ragto gently reminds him there's no need to push himself so much as they're not completely broke. He figures Rudo probably feels indebted because he adopted him after Rudo's biological dad got thrown into that hellhole for murder. Rudo quickly insists that's not how it is. He genuinely thinks of Ragto as family and is just doing his part. With a knowing smile, Ragto advises him to be equally honest with Chaiwa, causing Rudo to fluster so badly that he accidentally reopens his wound from the gunshot last night. So Ragto instantly tends to him, carefully applying first aid and changing the bandages on his hands as well. Looking at his scared up hands, Rudo remembers they've been screwed up for as long as he can recall. Everyone always judged him for it, and sometimes they'd randomly hurt like hell for no damn reason, until Ragto hooked him up with those black gloves, which somehow magically eased the pain. After finishing up the bandaging, Ragto bluntly tells him he better hurry and confess to Chaiwa before some other asshole steals her away. As they bicker and joke around, some creepy bastard wearing a mask listens silently from the shadows outside, spying on their entire conversation. The following morning, Rudo finally gets off his ass, builds up the nerve to confess, grabs the puppy toy, and heads straight to Chaiwa's place. But of course, shit never goes smoothly, because along the way he stumbles onto a scene that's sadly not uncommon around these parts. At the slum's edge is the infamous pit, the dumping ground for garbage and hardcore criminals. Today they're throwing another poor bastard down into that godforsaken hole. Rudo watches, unable to look away, wondering just what the hell actually happens to people who get tossed in there. Out of nowhere, Chaiwa pops up right beside him, commenting casually about how messed up the scene is, nearly making Rudo jump out of his skin because he wasn't mentally prepared to see her yet. Completely oblivious to his panic, she casually continues chatting about the executions and other messed up shit before suddenly turning serious, telling him she doesn't want to see his dumb ass thrown down there. She admits there might be valuable stuff in that garbage pit, but it ain't worth risking his life over. Rudo quietly mutters that Ragto said the same exact thing, and with a gentle look, she tells him that's because Ragto also genuinely cares about him. It takes Rudo's potato-powered brain a solid moment to realize that when Chaiwa said Ragto loves him too, she was low-key confessing that she also likes him. Chaiwa quickly turns bright red, clearly embarrassed as hell by how her words sounded, but it's already too late. Rudo is gone, mentally checked out, short-circuited completely. He collapses dramatically to the ground, covering his face like an idiot before finally gathering the courage to hand over the puppy toy, nervously mumbling that even though it came from the trash, the puppy would definitely be happier with her. To his absolute shock, Chaiwa happily accepts the gift, promising to cherish it. Rudo practically loses his shit right then and there, happier than he's ever been in his miserable life. He literally starts jumping and dancing like a complete dork all the way home, eager as hell to brag about it to Ragto immediately. Along the way, he bumps into a bunch of guards who don't even bother acknowledging him, which is weird, but whatever, he's too giddy to give a damn why they're roaming around the slums today. He then bursts through the front door, excitedly babbling to Ragto about everything that just happened, but his words catch in his throat when he sees Ragto collapsed on the floor, pinned beneath some creepy-ass masked bastard. The masked dude calmly turns to look straight at Rudo, then coldly plunges his knife even deeper into Ragto's body. Rage completely overtakes Rudo. He charges at the murderer, but before he can even swing a punch, he gets clocked so damn hard he doesn't even feel himself hit the ground. By the time Rudo regains his senses, the masked asshole has already finished the job. The killer casually picks a book off the floor and strolls out, barely giving Rudo a second glance. Rudo tries crawling after him, desperate for vengeance, but then a weak voice stops him in his tracks. Ragto's somehow still hanging on, barely breathing, and with his last ounce of strength, he begs Rudo to run. Panicked, Rudo rushes back to Ragto's side, promising he'll get help, but Ragto just weakly shakes his head, telling him to get the hell out and change this shit show of a world into something better. Then Ragto's body goes limp, and Rudo's brain freezes, unable to even comprehend the nightmare he just witnessed. At that exact moment, the soldiers storm into the house, immediately zapping Rudo with their stun weapons and pinning him to the ground, accusing him of murder. Rudo frantically insists he's innocent, begging them to chase after the real killer who literally just walked out, but the guards don't give a shit, claiming they caught him red-handed and his explanations don't matter. Rudo continues pleading his innocence, but they ignore his desperate pleas and they shut him up the good old-fashioned way, knocking him the hell out with a solid punch to the head. Before long, Rudo's hauled onto the scaffold to pay for a crime he didn't commit. Practically everyone from the slums has gathered for the twisted entertainment, along with some smug-ass VIP assholes from the wealthy districts. The judge looks down at him with disgust, spouting some pretentious bullshit about murder being among the most terrible sins one can commit. He coldly states that even though Rudo's victim was just some slum dweller, the sentence won't be softened. Death by tossing him into the damn pit. The crowd goes wild with approval, cheering like they're watching a freaking football game. Rudo still can't wrap his head around this nightmare and desperately searches for even one face that believes his innocence. His eyes lock onto Chiwa standing in the crowd. He shouts at her, desperately pleading that he didn't kill Ragto, begging her to find the real bastard responsible. But Chiwa coldly shuts him down, saying she trusted him once, but he betrayed that trust. She bitterly calls him nothing but a son of a murderer after all, tossing the puppy toy aside as she turns her back on him. Her betrayal cuts deeper than any of the other shit he's been through, and something inside him snaps. Rudo loses his cool completely, furiously yelling back at the bastards calling him trash. He screams that they're the real garbage here, brainless sacks of meat without the guts or the will to see the truth. He vows he'll drag every last one of them straight to hell, but right then he notices the creepy masked murderer standing casually in the crowd, enjoying the show. But before he can shout out the truth, though, they shove him off the edge. The fall feels endless, and Rudo eventually blacks out, thinking he's done for good. But luck's weirdly on his side today because he lands in the massive heap of garbage at the pit's bottom, unharmed except for his shattered pride. As he slowly regains consciousness, he wonders how in the unholy hell he's still breathing. Then the smell hits in full force, and even a seasoned trash connoisseur like himself gags uncontrollably, almost passing out again from the stench alone. When his eyes finally adjust, he takes in the sheer, endless ocean of filth stretching out in front of him, seeing shit he's never seen before mixed in with familiar junk. He's still wondering what kind of messed up place he's landed in when suddenly an enormous shadow looms over him, blotting out the little light available. Rudo turns around and holy shit, standing before him is a monstrous creature made entirely out of trash, glaring down at him with massive disgusting fangs ready to rip him apart. Rudo suddenly bolts into a panicked run as even more monsters pour out from the garbage. Within seconds, 3 huge creatures corner him, sealing off every path of escape. In a flash of pure horror, Rudo finally realizes these aren't ordinary beasts. They're hideous giants cobbled together from heaps of filthy trash. He can't comprehend how something this twisted is even possible, let alone how he'll make it out alive. With no other choice, he relies on pure reflex, wildly evading each strike while desperately scanning for any chance to break free. He suddenly trips over something, a human skull, and horror fills him as he imagines ending up exactly like that lifeless skeleton. He refuses to accept it, yet deep down, he's running out of hope. Rage and despair hit him as he curses those bastards who threw him here despite his innocence, asking himself bitterly how things could have possibly gotten this bad. The garbage shifts beneath his feet, causing the ground to give way, sending him plummeting downward into the darkness. He crashes hard, pain shooting through every inch of his battered body, barely able to move. He can't catch his breath, the filthy air slicing through his lungs like glass with each gasp. He knows he's out of time, so he desperately scans around for someplace safe, but sees nothing except endless hills of trash. The cruel reality sinks in. This nightmare might really be how it all ends. He coughs violently, blood spilling from his mouth, proof that his body is beginning to shut down even though his mind refuses to surrender. The creatures move closer, ready to finish him off. Exhausted, beaten and cornered, Rudo's thoughts drift to his foster father Recto, a good man who didn't deserve to die. Anger and grief fill him again. He can't quit. Not now, not before making Recto's killer pay. Right then, something deep inside him wakes up, an unfamiliar but powerful force urging him to stand and fight. Using every bit of strength left, he grabs a metal pipe lying nearby and forces himself to his feet. There's no way he's going down quietly, not until he's found the bastard who framed him, not until he's avenged Recto. With all his fury channeled into one last swing, Rudo smashes the monster back, knocking it violently off balance. Elsewhere in the vast sea of garbage, a peculiar guy holding an umbrella casually observes Rudo's desperate fight through a pair of binoculars. We'll find out who this dude is soon enough. Back in the heat of battle, Rudo goes full wild mode, swinging furiously, with no real plan except pure chaos. The monster shoves him back, landing a solid hit, But Rudo's adrenaline numbs any pain, and he immediately retaliates by launching his steel pipe straight into the beast's face. Just as he catches his breath, another monster erupts from the trash beneath him, knocking Rudo backward. Now the pain finally hits, blood drips from his mouth, but he's too amped up to stop. He charges forward again, grabbing a sharp piece of metal roofing and violently splits one monster in half. It's a crazy achievement, but Rudo's body is at its absolute limit, and he can't avoid the next beast's attack. But the creature pounds the ground with such force that it catapults Rudo into the air, landing right at the feet of that mysterious guy watching earlier. This stranger has a mask on to handle the poisonous air, and he carries that stupid umbrella even though it's not raining. Without a word, he casually kicks Rudo for literally no reason at all, then finally slaps a breathing mask onto his face, letting him catch some air. Struggling to comprehend what's going on, Rudo immediately begins questioning the man about his identity, their location, and the nature of this bizarre place. But the guy coldly refuses to answer, just telling him to shut up. When Rudo keeps shouting louder like an absolute idiot, demanding more answers, the mysterious man finally snaps and yells back, telling him that this place isn't underground, it's actually above ground. It's just where the whole damn city dumps its endless trash. The guy explains he was only staying quiet to avoid attracting more monsters. But thanks to their loud yelling match, those trash beasts, as he calls them, start emerging again. The stranger informs Rudo that normal weapons won't do shit against these monsters, but luckily for him, this man's umbrella is not some ordinary umbrella. Suddenly, the umbrella morphs into an even crazier version of itself. Calmly and coolly, the guy points it at the nearest monster, and with a powerful drill-like attack, vaporizes the beast into tiny bits. Several other trash monsters charge at them, but the guy wipes them all out with a single ridiculous sweep of his umbrella, leaving Rudo speechless. For a final touch, he unleashes his most powerful attack, dramatically calling out Unbreaker Octashredder, and slices all the remaining monsters cleanly into shreds. With the monsters gone, the strange guy walks back over to Rudo. Once again, Rudo asks who exactly he is, and this time the guy finally removes his mask, introduces himself as Engine, and casually mentions he's a cleaner around here, but clearly cleaner has a deeper meaning, suggesting he might belong to some mysterious secret group called the Cleaners. The second Engine takes off the mask. The unbearable stench hits him hard, making him choke. He immediately regrets that dumb decision, complains loudly about the horrific air quality, and quickly puts the mask back on. At this moment, Rudo realizes Engine is probably just some random dude like himself, and now that he's gotten at least a few answers, his exhausted body finally lets him pass out again. In his unconscious state, memories flood his mind, taking him back to a time when he was still with Recto. One day, he come home soaked and miserable after being bullied by some kids. When Recto asked him what happened, Rudo explained that he told those brats that objects have souls if you treat them well, so they mocked him and pushed him around. Recto asked if he fought back, and when Rudo said no, Recto praised him for it. Rudo then reminded Recto that he himself once said if an object is treated carefully and respectfully for a long time, eventually a soul will inhabit it. Recto walked closer, asking if Rudo truly believed that legend. He admitted that even he, who had shared this belief, didn't know if it was actually true because it was merely a legend passed down with no concrete proof. Still, Recto said he'd rather believe it anyway, that objects, when treated well, could indeed be inhabited by a soul. He gently dried Rudo off, remarking that even the towel could have a soul, or else how could it be so effective at cleaning a person's body? And Recto said that even the gloves Rudo wore could someday gain their own soul and help him out. They laughed together, joking that maybe even toilets could have souls if people treated them kindly enough. But that warm memory is short-lived, as Rudo is dragged back into reality, a reality that's even crueler than he'd expected. But at least he's still alive after what just happened. He feels himself chained up and getting roughly dragged across the filthy ground. When he glances up, he realizes the person dragging him along is Engine, the same oddball from before. Engine clearly doesn't give a damn about Rudo's comfort, continuing to drag him mercilessly through the dirt. Rudo wonders if maybe it's finally time to just accept his miserable fate. But if he gives up now, that means giving up on revenge against all the people who wronged him, and he's not ready to let them off the hook just yet. Rudo desperately screams at Engine, demanding to be taken back to the surface. Engine looks at him like he's lost his damn mind, mocking him for thinking there's even a surface left to return to. Engine bluntly explains that what Rudo thinks is the surface isn't even there anymore. The world he came from is a sphere, a moving structure that's already drifted far away from where Rudo was tossed out, making any return impossible. But Rudo isn't listening to Engine's explanations. He stubbornly insists he'll scream nonstop unless Engine helps him get back. He pleads desperately, begging Engine to at least tell him more about this messed up world and the sphere. Engine, however, couldn't care less, and he ignores Rudo's begging, continues dragging him in silence, and eventually drops him off near a line of grimy-looking trucks. And without another word, Engine walks away. Rudo, panicked and frustrated, yells at Engine again, but the strange guy doesn't even look back. Rudo slowly turns around and sees a group of strange figures approaching him. At first, he isn't even sure if they're human, just praying they're not another bunch of monsters about to rip him apart. Thankfully, they don't seem hostile, at least not yet. They approach curiously, surprised and amused by the fact that he's still alive. They ask if he's actually from the sphere, and when he confirms it, they excitedly remove their masks and hurry closer. They reveal it's been forever since they found someone from the sphere who wasn't already dead, so seeing one alive shocks them completely. One of them kindly steps forward, pretending to help Rudo by removing the chains. Relieved, Rudo instantly concludes these folks must be better than Engine. But unfortunately, he couldn't be more wrong because these people are far worse. They immediately rebind him tighter than before, roughly chaining him to one of the trucks. Laughing cruelly right in front of him, they talk openly about the huge profit they'll make from selling him. Not only do they plan to sell his body, but they gleefully discuss chopping him up, selling his head, eyes, ears, everything. They mockingly ask if he actually believed they cared, reminding him harshly that everyone here hates people from the sphere. In fact, sphereites fetch such high prices precisely because of how much they're despised. You might be wondering why sphereites are hated so damn much, and honestly the reason isn't complicated. The folks up there on the sphere keep dumping all their garbage down here into the pit, poisoning the air, ruining the environment, and turning their trash into deadly monsters. Countless people have lost their loved ones to these creatures, so the hatred toward anyone from the sphere runs deep. One of the men picks up a handful of trash and shoves it toward Rudo, mocking him by saying he better eat it if he wants to stay alive, since they need him breathing to fetch a good price. And once they sell him, they'll gladly pay extra to watch him get tortured. The guy forces a chunk of garbage right into Rudo's mouth. In blind rage, Rudo snaps, biting down viciously and ripping the skin clean off two of the man's fingers before swallowing them whole. He then defiantly grabs another handful of trash and eats that too, telling them he doesn't give a damn about their whining over trash, monsters, the sphere, or anything else, because all he feels is pure fury. Suddenly, his body ignites in an intense surge of red energy. The chains binding him transform into a weapon he instinctively wields. At that moment, he remembers Recto's words that objects, if treated with care, can gain souls of their own and even save you someday. Engine watches silently from a distance, recognizing immediately what's happening. People who can harness souls from objects are known as givers. Realizing what the hell is going on, the injured man desperately orders the others to overwhelm Rudo quickly, claiming givers only have the strength from a single object, so they hurry up and drop the chain from his hand. But they're completely stunned when Rudo grabs a nearby tire and effortlessly draws strength from that as well. Now they realize this isn't just any ordinary giver, he can control multiple objects and he's insanely powerful. Rudo takes them all down one by one, and as he's about to finish off their leader, Engine steps in, grabbing Rudo's arm and suppressing the raging red energy instantly. Rudo regains his senses, confused and disoriented, but recognizes Engine immediately. Engine apologizes for ditching him earlier, saying he did it only to see exactly what Rudo was capable of. Now that he's confirmed Rudo's strength, Engine promises to explain everything about his abilities, the pit, and even the sphere, if Rudo agrees to join the cleaners because they need someone like him badly. It's a pretty tempting offer considering he desperately needs allies and protection in this messed up world. But Rudo remembers his past betrayals and quickly rejects the deal. Clearly, Engine has no clue what the word no means, because before Rudo can process it, he's already sitting in a clinic receiving treatment. Meanwhile, Engine enthusiastically phones his friend, proudly announcing that he's managed to land an extraordinary prodigy for the cleaners group. Rudo is floored by this revelation since he's pretty damn sure he never agreed to anything. He insists he needs to get back to the sphere immediately, but the creepy doctor, whose eyes are wider than a freaking owl, snaps at him to shut it. The doctor shouts at Rudo for wandering into the no man's land, where even the air itself is literally poisonous, calling him a walking disaster for managing to get kidnapped on top of it. He sternly instructs Rudo to thank Engine, since he somehow rescued his sorry ass from two terrible fates in just one day. Rudo silently curses Engine under his breath, then moves on to mentally cursing the creepy doctor, who apparently is actually an old woman and gets incredibly offended when Rudo mistakenly refers to her as an old man. Once she finishes patching him up, she promptly boots both Rudo and Engine out onto the street. Outdoors, Rudo reluctantly thanks Engine for covering the treatment, clarifying that he's only after information on how he can get home. He firmly tells Engine that he doesn't have time to waste joining his little cleaner club, or whatever they call themselves, but Engine just sighs in disappointment, mentioning that he'd hoped Rudo would have learned something about how spheroids get treated down here after being kidnapped. He warns Rudo that if anyone else figures out he's from the sphere, he'll regret ever being born, and decides information in this hellhole doesn't come free. With that, Engine leads him into a desolate dystopian city, yet despite its grim appearance, it's still miles better than the disgusting wasteland outside. Engine even buys him a burger, and Rudo devours it without holding back, especially since he threw up all the garbage he ingested earlier. He had always imagined the bottom of the pit as nothing but heaps of trash, yet here there are actual cities bustling with people trying to survive. As he's eating, Rudo notices a girl walk into the store and can't help but stare, but before he gets lost in thought, Engine decides to educate him on how things work down here. He explains that garbage isn't the only thing accumulating at the bottom. Emotions also gather here, eventually manifesting into an energy called anima. Those trash beasts Rudo saw earlier are one manifestation of anima, and though they generally stick close to the garbage heaps, occasionally they wander into the cities, wreaking havoc. Engine goes on, saying ordinary weapons can't even scratch the surface of these monsters because their cores are made entirely of concentrated anima, but Rudo's gloves have the unique power to destroy them. Rudo is stunned by this revelation, and Engine explains that when something gets cherished for a long time, it accumulates anima too, turning into what's called a vital instrument. Vital instruments have the power to destroy a trash beast's core, but not everyone can tap into that hidden energy. Engine reveals that people who can channel that power are called givers, and the cleaners are their group, which is full of these givers who wipe out trash monsters. Rudo then bluntly asks Engine if he'll promise to show him how to return to the sphere if he joins the cleaners, but Engine casually admits he doesn't have the slightest clue. Rudo immediately snaps at him for misleading him, but Engine calmly reminds Rudo that he never said he knew how to get him back. Yet Engine assures him that their boss is extremely wise and might know a way home. Rudo is pissed because now he's stuck needing to meet Engine's boss before deciding anything, but then Engine suddenly asks about his gloves. Rudo hesitantly reveals that his father gave them to him, and they're the only keepsake he has left of him. Engine finally understands why he cares so deeply about those raggedy old gloves, and sincerely tells Rudo to take good care of them, because they got a powerful soul residing inside. Rudo feels a wave of emotion, remembering how everyone else always ridiculed him about his gloves. But before the moment sinks in, Engine gets a message and says he has to meet up with a coworker. As Engine starts to leave, Rudo quickly stands up and awkwardly thanks him for everything he's done. In response, Engine casually tosses a pouch of money toward him, warning him to be careful how he spends it. Rudo can't believe Engine is just giving him cash after everything else he's done for him, but Engine brushes it off, explaining it's no big deal because he just sold Rudo's sphere clothes for the money. That's how he could afford his medical treatment and food, so Rudo doesn't even need to thank him. Rudo completely loses his shit upon hearing this, but Engine just shrugs and says that Rudo couldn't have walked around the city dressed in sphere gear anyway. Engine then announces he's off to see his trainer and instructs Rudo to stay put and wait patiently. Rudo is still fuming over Engine's carefree attitude when suddenly he sees a sneaky cat grabbing his money pouch and darting away. He immediately bolts after the thief, but the cat easily outruns him. Fortunately, he notices a crescent moon-shaped stick lying on the street and grabs it without hesitation, using it to skillfully stop the cat in its tracks. Just as he finally pins the cat down, the staff's owner suddenly appears, furious at Rudo for trying to swipe his precious stick. Rudo gets baffled and asks what's so special about this dumb piece of wood anyway, which only makes the guy even more enraged. He quickly snatches back his staff and shoves Rudo aside, warning him that he's about to pay for his crimes. But before anything else, the guy gets a bit too intimate with his stick, leaving Rudo utterly confused. At that moment, Rudo spots the cleaner emblem, the same one from Engine's umbrella, and realizes that this guy is also part of the cleaners. The man then activates the hidden power of his staff, turning it into a legit weapon, and takes a swing at Rudo. Thankfully, he intentionally misses since Engine already filled him in about Rudo earlier. Calming down, he introduces himself as Zanka, explaining that Engine asked him to handle Rudo's training. He sighs, saying he never expected he'd have to teach a brat basic manners like not stealing other people's stuff, but Rudo defensively explains that he was just borrowing the stick to get his cash back from the cat. Zanka remarks that Rudo's dad probably didn't raise him right, and that immediately pushes Rudo's buttons, because insulting Recto is the one thing he can't tolerate. Yet, as anger boils inside him, Rudo suddenly recalls something Recto once told him. If you really want someone to hear you out, step back first and try seeing things from their perspective. Taking a deep breath, Rudo admits to himself that Zanka has every right to be mad. After all, he took his precious treasure without asking. He imagines how he'd feel if someone took his gloves even accidentally, realizing it really was his own fault. So swallowing his pride, he sincerely apologizes to Zanka. The guy immediately chills out too, quickly reassuring Rudo that it's no big deal since he got his staff back, and admits he should have reacted more calmly himself. Honestly, Rudo is completely floored by how fast Zanka's personality flipped. Plus, this was the first time he'd ever managed to defuse a tense situation just by talking. He can't help thinking Regto might have actually been right about more stuff than you realize. Zanka then helps him stand up and casually asks about his vital instrument, wondering what kind of ability it has. Rudo replies that his gloves are probably his vital instrument, but confesses he doesn't really know what kind of power they've got yet. Zanka carefully checks out Rudo's gloves and genuinely compliments them, saying they're actually pretty badass. But Rudo is still hung up on how wildly different Zanka suddenly seems. It hits him that maybe it's because he's smiling now, recalling that Recto always told him smiling is key to making friends. But unluckily, smiling isn't exactly in Rudo's skill set, and frankly he'd probably need a plastic surgeon just to teach him how to properly flex those facial muscles. Even more unluckily, Rudo doesn't know this, so he bravely attempts his best imitation of a human smile. But instead, he delivers possibly the most horrifying expression Zanka has ever witnessed on a human face. Zanka immediately snaps again, demanding to know what the hell kind of face Rudo's trying to pull. He angrily asks if he's mocking him with that freakish look, and Rudo defensively questions why Zanka's mad this time, insisting that this was literally the best smile he had in him. Zanka replies that even someone blindfolded would know that abomination wasn't a smile, prompting Rudo to close his eyes and lips this time, hoping it'll look more natural. His expression is marginally less terrifying, but it's nowhere near enough to stop Zanka from being annoyed. Zanka thinks that Rudo must be feeling cocky after Engine called him a genius, so now he's blatantly mocking him. He warns Rudo that he'll never achieve his goals if he keeps acting like a clown, but that was exactly the line he shouldn't have crossed. Suddenly, Rudo's mind flashes to his goal of returning to the sphere and fulfilling Recto's final wishes, so he firmly tells Zanka that he's dead serious about all of it. He demands Zanka stop insulting him, prompting Zanka to whip out his weapon again, stating bluntly that they're probably not gonna get along after all. Rudo completely agrees, grabbing a random metal rod from a nearby trash bin and instantly awakening its hidden power. Zanka's jaw nearly drops seeing Rudo casually turn some random piece of junk into a vital instrument, finally understanding why Engine was raving about him being a genius. However, Zanka is still confident that someone with just raw talent won't be able to take down even an average guy like him, who's busted his ass to reach this point. Rudo doesn't even realize that Zanka's trash talk was a distraction until the staff suddenly crashes down inches in front of him, forcing him to dodge frantically. Zanka immediately charges, relentlessly chasing Rudo until he finally pins him to the ground, satisfied with his victory. But then Zanka feels something weird on his face. He swipes it off and out of sheer curiosity sniffs it, only to discover to his absolute horror that it's literal shit. He freaks out upon realizing that the metal rod Rudo randomly grabbed was actually the handle of a damn toilet plunger. Zanka frantically tries to explain what the hell a plunger even is, but Rudo isn't in the mood for explanations. Instead, he wildly swings around his newly awakened plunger, still dripping with someone's unfortunate leftovers. Zanka absolutely loses his mind, frantically dodging flying shit like it's a live grenade, and soon enough, he's sprinting away from Rudo at full speed. Rudo has no clue why Zanka is suddenly terrified, but he figures he might as well roll with it, gleefully chasing him down while swinging his plunger weapon around. After several frantic minutes spent zigzagging through random alleyways like a Dan episode of Tom and Jerry, Zanka finally makes it to the main street, still pursued closely by Rudo. Just then, a random cat darts in front of Zanka, causing him to stumble and lose his balance, giving Rudo the perfect chance to catch up. Rudo leaps high into the air, swinging his plunger with every ounce of strength he has, as the terrified Zanka watches in slow-motion horror. He gets completely blasted by a relentless barrage of airborne poop, knocking him clean out. A little while later, Engine shows up to see how they're doing. When he casually asks Rudo if he's already met his new teacher, Rudo simply points towards Zanka, who's currently lying unconscious atop a garbage pile, twitching and spasming like he's been possessed. Engine helps Zanka get cleaned up and gives him a lift, but he can't help but laugh hysterically about how Zanka got totally owned by literal crap. Meanwhile, Rudo is quietly traumatized upon realizing the truth about the weapon he'd been enthusiastically swinging through the streets. Engine then casually mentions to Rudo that Zanka's a spoiled brat who's never had anyone handle him quite like this before. Rudo can only silently stare at the thoroughly mortified Zanka, but suddenly he notices a random pair of boots in the backseat. Engine then turns to Rudo and says that while their first meeting wasn't exactly ideal, Zanka is still going to be his trainer moving forward. He praises Zanka, saying he's actually the best instructor they have when it comes to mastering vital instruments. Zenka clearly values Enjin's words immensely, because despite being utterly humiliated moments ago, he can't help but giggle with joy upon hearing the praise. Right then, Enjin addresses a woman named Ryo sitting in the back, casually asking when exactly she climbed into the car. She wakes up gracefully from her beauty sleep and replies that she got curious about the new recruit. Rudo just stares in awe at her because she's drop-dead gorgeous, and suddenly, Ryo reaches out to gently play with his hair, fascinated by its unique color and texture. Rudo feels like he's accidentally stumbled into paradise, completely mesmerized by the attention of a hot girl toward him. While he's lost in his dirty, dreamy thoughts, Enjin smoothly drives out of the city, heading toward the cleaner's headquarters, nestled deep in the wild outskirts. A short while later, Enjin rolls past several wrecked towns and steers straight into a reinforced tunnel carved right through a towering cliffside. Once they emerge on the opposite end, everyone climbs out of the vehicle, and Enjin calmly announces to Rudo that they've arrived at the cleaner's main base. Rudo's mind is still wandering from Ryo's earlier awkward hair-playing session, but as he approaches the building, a couple of irritating flies start swarming close. Inside, a hot black receptionist sits calmly flipping through an adult magazine without a care in the world. Enjin introduces her to Rudo as Semyu, explaining she's responsible for checking out all the new recruits, but just as she's about to demonstrate her skills, she suddenly lunges forward with a fork, effortlessly skewering the two flies buzzing near Rudo's head. Rudo stands there stunned, mouth hanging open, as Semyu casually greets him. She says Enjin filled her in on all the details, but she still needs to give him a personal once-over to gauge his potential. As Semyu starts focusing deeply through her glasses, Enjin explains they're her vital instrument and they amplify her vision, letting her literally see what people are made of. Rudo's surprised by this revelation but doesn't have time to process it, because Semyu activates her power, peering into his hidden potential. What she sees shocks her enough to quickly deactivate the ability. Enjin then asks if everything's alright, and Semyu brushes it off, simply saying Rudo's athletic enough already, and that he has a decent bond with his vital instrument, though he'll definitely need some practice using it. Enjin senses she's holding something back, and Semyu casually admits there's some poop on the back of Rudo's neck. That shit makes Enjin burst out laughing, leaving Rudo utterly embarrassed. But then as he walks Rudo away to meet the boss, he throws one more glance back at Semyu, knowing full well she's hiding something important. As they head deeper into the facility, Enjin fills Rudo in on the cleaners. It got about 100 members in total, including fighters, guards, and support personnel. Most are scattered around on missions, so not many are actually present at headquarters. Enjin assures Rudo he'll eventually meet everyone, but as he opens the common room door, he sees a whole crowd of cleaners gathered, and they look like a bunch of psychos, so he awkwardly slams the door shut again, deciding introductions can definitely wait. Finally, they arrive at the boss's office, but before entering, Enjin advises Rudo not to immediately ask how to return to the sphere, and he suggests offering his services as a cleaner first to gain favor. Enjin also warns him not to mention anything about the boss's vital instrument, as nobody knows what it actually is or what it does. Naturally, Rudo's curiosity spikes, but when they enter the room, it's completely empty. Right then, Semyu pops in and tells them the boss is away on a mission and won't return for a few days. Rudo's confused by this, but Enjin casually explains it's pretty normal around here, and he'll just have to wait. That makes Rudo fuming, and he wonders what the hell he's supposed to do in the meantime, when Ryo suddenly shows up, smiling and inviting him to tag along with her instead. She clarifies that he can't officially become a cleaner until the boss approves him, so for now he can just tag along as her trainee, an arrangement she's happy with since she wants to get to know him better. Rudo's brain momentarily short-circuits because he's never had this kind of female attention in his entire sad life, and without a word, he obediently follows her like a good boy. They head straight to the strategy room, where Semyu briefs everyone that a small town near a polluted zone has urgently requested help after spotting small trash beasts nearby. Rudo is puzzled, asking what exactly these polluted zones are, causing Semyu to realize Enjin didn't even bother explaining the basics to him. She sighs and gives Rudo a quick rundown. The land is divided into safe zones, where humans can survive normally, and garbage-infested polluted zones, home to the dangerous trash beasts. She adds that the place Rudo first landed was a no-man's land, an especially toxic polluted zone where stepping foot usually means instant death for most people. Semyu then tosses Rudo a mask, sternly telling him he absolutely needs to keep it on whenever he's in the polluted zones. Without it, he'd choke on poisonous gases and drop dead in under 15 minutes. A little later, Rudo joins Ryo and her team for the mission, with Ryo firmly reminding him to stick close so he can learn properly. Still feeling uneasy about everything, Rudo starts panicking internally, wondering just how long he'd been breathing in poison back in the no man's land. but his anxiety quickly fades when he lays eyes on the gigantic garbage dump in front of them, instantly shifting into scavenger mode. He briefly wonders if anyone back up in the sphere even knows that humans live at the bottom of the pit, but honestly, he couldn't care less. To him, this garbage heap is a freaking gold mine where he can scavenge freely and fix things without getting scolded or beaten half to death. Snapping out of his trance, Rudo quickly catches up to Rio, asking about the other guys tagging along with them. She explains they're supporters, and though they don't have flashy special powers like the combatants, they're still incredibly valuable during assignments. Then one of the supporters cheerfully extends his hand for a handshake, and as soon as Rudo nervously accepts, the guy crushes his hand with bone-breaking strength. Rio bursts out laughing at Rudo's suffering, explaining that this crazy dude's got a grip so strong he can rip apart a trash beast's shell bare-handed. At this point, Rudo seriously wonders if he can handle any more of this psycho crew. Suddenly, another supporter shouts a warning that the trash beasts are incoming, and Rudo snaps to attention, determined to learn everything he can. Moments later, a swarm of small goat-like trash beasts shuffles out of the creepy garbage forest, causing Rudo to panic immediately. He turns to Rio, frantically asking how they're supposed to handle so many monsters. She calmly tells him to chill the hell out because they're just weak, pathetic trash beasts that can't even dent the wooden fence. Sure enough, the goat beasts hopelessly bash against the fence without doing a lick of damage. But just as Rudo starts calming down, a second wave appears, but this one is much larger and nastier. The bigger beasts charge the fence, quickly starting to break through, and Rudo panics again, desperately asking Rio what they're gonna do now. Rio remains annoyingly calm, insisting these beasts are still weak enough to be perfect practice for a newbie, and she confidently adds that they'll clean up this mess quickly and head back to base afterward to throw a big welcome party for Rudo. Rudo can't believe how insanely chill Rio is about risking her life every day against literal monsters, but she bluntly tells him that if he wants to survive up here, he better get a positive outlook real fast. Suddenly it clicks in Rudo's mind that Engin's just the same, and maybe that carefree attitude is exactly what he's been missing this whole time. So he decides right then he'll try to relax a little more. Just as Rudo starts feeling optimistic, an enormous trash beast smashes through the barricade, and even Rio visibly panics at its sheer size. Rudo desperately looks to her for reassurance that everything's still okay, but instead of fear, Rio's eyes sparkle with excitement. She exclaims how incredibly stylish the massive beast is, though it's definitely not ideal newbie training material. She's gonna have fun taking it down. She dramatically draws out her scissors, her vital instrument, and Rudo stares at her in utter disbelief. Rio casually activates the scissors and flings them into the sky, where they transform into massive razor-sharp blades. She catches them effortlessly with her leg, then charges straight into the horde of monsters, effortlessly slicing through several beasts in one smooth kick. Rudo can't even comprehend what's happening anymore, and the support guy casually explains that Rio's vital instrument is called the Ripper, and unlike normal folks, she wields those giant scissors using her feet. So Rudo recognizes that everyone has their own unique style when using their vital instruments. Just then, Handshake Guy shouts at Rudo to keep his damn guard up. Rudo notices too late that a level 2 trash beast is charging straight at him, but thankfully the supporter intercepts it, effortlessly crushing its skull bare-handed before chucking the corpse to Rio, who slices it cleanly mid-air. Laughing, Rio shouts for them to toss her more beasts, and the supporters happily oblige, eating heavy trash beasts at her like they're tossing baseballs. By the time Rudo finally wraps his head around this madness, realizing this insane teamwork is how cleaners roll, Rio's already wiped out all the small fry, leaving only the boss monster. The supporters immediately split up, quickly disabling any leftover beasts that might interfere with Rio's fight. But Rudo suddenly spots a supposedly downed beast waking up, attacking one of the supporters. Without hesitation, Rudo rushes forward, determined to prove his worth so he can finally get the info he desperately needs. He tries to transform the iron pipe he's holding into a weapon, but instead, it morphs into a spiked barricade. Rudo panics, realizing he's forgotten exactly how to control his power since he's only been using it on pure instinct. He struggles to hold the beast back as it pushes down on him, but luckily, Rio appears out of nowhere, effortlessly slicing the trash beast apart. She praises Rudo for following his instincts to protect his teammate, reassuring him he did well. The supporter he saved also thanks him, asking Rio if she finished off the boss. Rio admits she already split the big bastard clean in half, but somehow it's still standing. She's puzzled how it survived since she clearly hit its core, but since it refuses to die, she decides she'll just slice it into tiny, harmless pieces instead. The supporters quickly agree to record data on this new type of trash beast that's somehow resistant to vital instruments, then rush off to warn the nearby towns. Meanwhile, Rio charges at the giant beast, leaving Rudo standing there clueless, wondering why nobody ever tells him what to freaking do. Rio swiftly leaps onto the monster's face, hopping up to its head and effortlessly slicing off all the pipes sticking out, leaving the poor thing bald as an egg. After giving the monster an unwanted haircut, she notices a strange glow beneath her feet and realizes it must be the monster's core, which it desperately tried to hide. But before she can stab it, the trash beast goes berserk, violently shaking enough to toss her aside, reattaching the pipes to its head and furiously slamming its jaw into the ground. Rio somehow clings on, but then the beast suddenly turns its attack towards Rudo and the supporters. Rudo stands frozen in fear as he sees a barrage of metal pipes heading straight for him. Luckily, the pipes miss him by inches, but the ground beneath him collapses, sending him plummeting. As he falls, despair grips him, and he wonders what the hell he's even doing here. At this rate, he'll never get revenge on those bastards in the sphere or for Recto. Darkness creeps into his mind, but right then, the supporter guy catches him, pulling him back from the brink of hopelessness. He lifts Rudo onto his shoulder, scolding him that if he's got a damn goal, he shouldn't freeze up, he should run straight towards it. He tells Rudo to learn from supporters who don't even have powers but still keep moving forward without whining. Just then, Rudo sees Rio attacking the monster again, and judging by its screams, she's definitely found its weak spot. Rio leaps high above the beast before dropping like a meteor onto its head, piercing it with her scissors and ripping out the core. When she hits the ground and crushes the core beneath her, the trash beast instantly disintegrates into ash. The supporter rushes over, asking her how she killed it. Rio says she stabbed something other than the core and pulls out a small cardboard cutter, claiming this thing was powering the beast. The support guy nearly loses it, realizing that the cutter is a vital instrument, and there's absolutely no way a trash beast should have had something like that. Meanwhile, the leader of the bandits who'd planned on selling Rudo suddenly wakes up groggy in a dimly lit room. Confused, he tries to figure out where the hell he is, when suddenly the shady guy lounging on the sofa across from him asks in a chilling voice for the exact location of the kid from the sphere he'd been muttering about in his nap. Later at the cleaners HQ, Rio throws together a welcome party for Rudo. The mood is lively enough until Zanka shuffles in, still groggy and stretching after napping most of the afternoon away. Spotting the food and noise, he asks Rio what the whole fuss is about, so Rio tells him they're celebrating Rudo's first proper day out in the field. But across the room, Rudo isn't joining in. He's hunched in a corner, head lowered, clearly not in the mood. Zanka frowns at the sight and asks why the cheeky kid looks so beaten down. So Rio says that ever since his vital instrument failed him in the middle of a fight, his confidence has taken a hit. Zanka says that's rough and pivots to the report about Rio encountering a strange trash beast. She confirms it, saying that rather than an Emma core, the creature's heart was a vital instrument, a discovery none of them anticipated and nothing their training covered. Since there was nothing she could do right then, Rio left the issue to the higher ranks and headed back to set up the party. At the same time, Rudo keeps brooding until the support team's chief arrives to speak with him. The man gives his name as Gris and tells Rudo he did well yesterday. Rudo insists he did nothing, but Gris points out that he protected a fellow supporter from a trash beast. Rudo adds that afterward his power would not answer him, and Gris and Rio had to pull him out. He is sick of it, because back on the sphere he kept slipping, and Recto was always covering for him. Rudo calls himself a complete letdown who will never meet anyone's expectations, but Gris suddenly thanks him, breaking that line of thought. Gris says most newcomers in the cleaners treat supporters like nobodies with no real power, but Rudo did not. He brings up Follow, the one Rudo saved. Follow joined to be a combatant, but without a vital instrument, he is serving as a supporter, guarding a cherished item he hopes will become his weapon one day. Gris tells Rudo not to obsess over getting stronger or chasing other people's expectations. He asks what Rudo always wanted, even before everything went wrong on the sphere. Rudo thinks hard, and Gris says if he finds whatever first woke the fire in his soul, he will be able to find his way again. Then he gently pats Rudo's head and tells him to have faith in himself. That simple gesture hits Rudo harder than any words, and his emotions overwhelm him because that warm pat on the head was something his father used to do for him. So tears threaten to spill, but suddenly Engine walks over, drapes an arm across his shoulder, and ruins the emotional mood. He asks why Rudo has not touched his food, and a moment later Rio and Zanka show up. They all tell him to get back in the mix since he is the guest of honor, and because the spread is disappearing fast. Moved by how much they care, Rudo falls in with them. While they eat, one guy flicks on the music and snatches a handful of spray cans. Then he starts misting the wall with color like Banksy, and Engine tells Rudo to keep an eye on the one named Gob, since he acts on impulse and ignores everyone else. As Gob sketches his mural, the others gripe at him, telling him to hold off until they finish their meals. But as already said, he couldn't care less. Down on the ground floor, the hot Simu returns to her desk, already expecting the phone to ring any second. The instant it buzzes, she picks up and takes a request. Then she calls in Zanka along with a crew of supporters to handle it. Zanka asks why Rudo is even with the squad when he has not been formally accepted into the cleaners. Semiu says the job they just got ties directly to Rudo. She explains it came from a merchant ambushed by a trash beast while crossing a polluted zone. He got out alive, but his valuable cargo was taken, and he wants them to put the beast down and recover it. This is where Rudo matters, because the cargo is a living spherate. Everyone is stunned, and Semiu notes that seeing two living spherates topside at once is extremely rare, which means something is off. So she wants Rudo to examine it himself. Rudo mulls it over, and Gris tells him to rein in his feelings before he decides. Rudo knows his power is unreliable, and that could weigh the team down, but he still wants to meet the other spherate in case it offers a clue about getting back to the surface. He chooses to go, and Zanka is not thrilled, but Semiu knows exactly how to win him over. She says the assignment was meant for Engine, but he is tied up on another job right now, and he said he trusts Zanka to take it. That is all it takes to flip the #1 Engine fan, and he cheerfully leads the team into the polluted zone. As they move along, Rudo asks Gris whether he goes without a weapon, and Gris replies that he does carry a knife, though he trusts his own hands more. One of the supporters chimes in that Gris actually keeps a talisman he prays over often, and Gris reddens, embarrassed that the secret slipped. He decides to show Rudo the charm, saying it is nothing remarkable, but it gives him something to hold on to. Right then, they spot a spooky-looking girl standing behind them. The spooky girl claims she is the merchant who hired them for this job. So Rudo immediately fires questions about the spherate, and the merchant says she was hauling her luggage when she stumbled upon an unconscious spherate. Worried for him, she picked them up to carry them away, but a trash beast attacked and made off with the spherate. Rudo presses the merchant, asking if she intends to sell the spherate, and she rejects the charge, saying she does not want that and is simply very curious about spherates. Zanka thinks the tale reeks like the dump they are heading toward. Trash beasts attack humans on sight, and they do not go out of their way to kidnap one. He decides something is suspicious, but will deal with it when the time comes. The merchant then leads them to the building where the trash beast ran after abducting the spherate. Zanka then tells everyone to stay on guard because the creature could strike from any direction, but when they step inside, the place is bare except for a single figure at the far end. The merchant says that it is the spherate and starts pushing Rudo toward them, and the other cleaners end up shoved along too. Once they get close enough, Rudo realizes it is not a person at all, but a doll dressed like a spherate. Yet it is already too late as the merchant hops backward, telling them to hurry. The very next moment, the floor beneath Rudo's feet turns to mud, and the whole group plunges to the level below. They ask themselves what just happened, and the merchant asks whether they are all right. They answer that they are fine and ask what this place is and where the spherate is. The merchant gives a creepy laugh and points at Rudo, saying he is the spherate. Then she turns to mud and melts away. Right then, two voices hail the spherate giver, and a pair of violet electric globes glide toward them out of the dark. Zanka pieces it together on the spot, mostly because of those purple crackling lights. He knows the crew behind this are the raiders, and they are not even pretending to hide that they intend to snatch Rudo from the cleaners. Rudo, thrown by this new bunch of oddballs, hears Gris explain they are this world's bandits, and the part that makes them lethal is that all of them are givers too. He orders his squad to carve out an exit, while he and Follow will shield Rudo. He assigns Zanka to deal with the two raiders alone, and though Zanka hesitates, he sees there is no alternative. The supporters bolt the other way at once, and Gris tells Rudo to stick with them. Rudo says he could handle a pack of bandits himself, but Gris warns him not to discount the raiders, especially when they do not know what gifts they carry. Elsewhere, Zanka needles the raiders, saying he always figured they would come for Rudo, though he did not expect them to track him this fast. He asks if they intend to sell him, since a living spherate could fetch enough coin to retire in comfort. The raiders laugh and say they are not planning to sell Rudo, rather they are hungry for knowledge about the sphere, and a spherate is the best source they could ask for. They want answers to a lot of things, especially how he crossed the barrier and lived. Zanka is curious about the barrier claim too, but he decides to finish the raiders quickly. He says that since they orchestrated this whole setup, he does not need to worry about a trash beast. The female raider answers that he still needs to worry about the mud dolls she can create whenever she likes, and Zanka says he can swat weak targets like that with his eyes shut. He then snaps his staff to life and starts wiping out the mud dolls, but the male raider blends into the decoys and strikes from behind, and Zanka barely twists in time before the punch slams him hard into the column. Once more, the man ducks into an earthen decoy, and the female raider sneers that cleaners only ever brawl with trash beasts, so they have no clue how to handle people. She tells him this is the last round to find the real one he will ever play, and Zanka braces himself and throws in everything he has. He keeps smashing the clay puppets, yet the male raider keeps slipping in and punching him from behind. Zanka is boxed in now, and when he lunges for the female raider to put her down, his feet shoot out on a mud trap she laid beforehand. She says he is the only fighter in the crew who can challenge her, and once he drops, the rest will be helpless. She says his loss is only a matter of time, but Zanka barks that if she wants to keep running her mouth, she should start a podcast. He adds that at first he figured she was steering the mud puppets with that shovel while the guy used his vital instrument to dish out the damage. And after watching them a bit longer, he realizes that the first read was off. The man is just throwing punches, and his vital instrument looks like the snowshoes that let him move freely on solid footing. Now the smooth footwork despite all the muck underfoot makes sense, and he jeers at the pair, calling them a perfect little combo. The woman snaps at that and tells him to shut up, which he absolutely does not. He says he may lack experience fighting people, but he understands his own vital instrument far better than they do. That is why he can pull off things they cannot, and she lunges at him. Zanka then slams his staff into the floor, sending a wave of sound rolling through the chamber. He reads the changes in vibration as it ripples through the mud effigies, and the moment it runs through the one hiding the male raider, he pins his location. He bursts forward at full tilt and drops the man with a single hit, then clips the female raider as well. As she blacks out, her creations collapse at once, and Zanka mutters they were nothing but rookies. But suddenly the raider's leader materializes behind him and says he should try someone stronger if he is still unsatisfied. At that moment, Rudo and the support team finally reach the exit door, so Grizz pushes it open, revealing a narrow stairwell climbing upward. He immediately instructions the other supporters to head up and call for reinforcements, while he remained behind to check on Zanka's situation. Just then, a figure comes rushing toward them through the corridor, so they guess it must be Zanka, already done dealing with those two clowns. Instead, it's the enemy boss in the flesh. The boss starts studying Rudo closely with a measuring stare, verifying that the target is indeed him. He then vaults onto the doorway and pulverizes the surrounding masonry, sealing the exit as he identifies Rudo as the spherite giver. Grizz cautions that Rudo is under the cleaner's protection, and crossing him makes you the enemy of all of them. The man shrugs off the warning, saying his atrocious sense of direction is the only reason he arrived late. He adds he never intended to give them this much breathing room and starts strolling toward them. When Grizz asks about Zanka's whereabouts, the raider waves him off again and tells Rudo someone wants a word with him. The raider then wrenches off Rudo's mask, pointing out that there aren't any trash monsters here. When Rudo presses about Zanka, he says he went easy on him and only knocked him out, though the poison is probably giving him a rough time. He triggers his vital instrument, the rings on his fingers unfurling into razor claws, and warns Rudo to come quietly. Both supporters dive at him at once to try to hold him down, but he shrugs them off and slams them hard to the floor. As the boss readies his claws again, Grizz steps in front of Rudo, swearing to defend his crew at any price. The boss lowers the talons and sneers about the cleaner's so-called weak supporters, claiming they're useless and can't protect a thing. Rudo tells Grizz to fall back, since Grizz is unarmed against the raider, and insists he can handle the boss himself. The boss asks Rudo to promise he won't get angry, and claims he has already killed Grizz with an attack too quick for anyone to see. He then drives those claws more through Grizz, and declares that wimps like him are utterly useless. As Grizz collapses, his lucky charm slips free and tumbles, so Rudo snaps out a hand and grabs it. Rudo's mind snaps back to the day Recto came home and caught him smashing his forehead into the wall like a madman, blood streaming down his face. After laying the little boy down, Recto asked why he'd done that. Rudo answered that Recto had taught him never to hurt other people. Watching the boy turn that rule on himself gave Recto a pounding ache, yet he sat beside him and asked what pushed him this far, even after the ache in his hands had faded and he had started keeping away from everyone. Rudo said there was no single trigger, only a hateful knot lodged in his damned head, and even if someone asked, he could not explain it. Hearing that, Recto understood, The boy believed his parents had thrown him away and now thought he is worthless, and a child like him wasn't built to carry feelings that heavy. When Rudo asked what worthless even meant, Recto decided first to patch him up and then take him outside, because a big slice of his despair came from having nothing amusing to do. He told Rudo to go explore and try everything until he found something that truly made him happy. He hyped him up, saying a day would come when that empty room was crammed with things he loved, then made him promise to warn him ahead of time if he ever planned on bringing a girl to the house. They then headed to Backwater Village's library to read for a while, and afterward Recto tried to teach him soccer, but the soft-hearted kid felt sorry for the ball and just patted it. Next they gave cooking a shot. Rudo turned out to be excellent at slicing vegetables, so excellent he cut straight through the cutting board, a total epic fail moment. Recto was simply pleased to see some spark in him, and there was plenty of time to figure out what truly fit. Right then Rudo spotted a villager tossing junk and asked what the man was doing. The discarded item fascinated him so much that he shoved through the doorway and dove straight into the dumpster. By the time Recto caught up, the boy was sobbing hard and clutching the object, leaving Recto unsure which feeling had grabbed him. Rudo sobbed that it was awful to throw away something with its whole life ahead of it just because it was a little broken. He kept shouting that he wanted to fix it, and Recto realized Rudo wasn't simply projecting his own hurt. He genuinely saw value in things everyone else had already labeled trash. Back to now, Rudo awakens the power sealed inside Griss's lucky charm, and Griss, still clinging to life, finally grasps why he himself could never get it to respond, because until this moment, no one truly understood what the charm was. Rudo's gift doesn't merely convert stray items into vital instruments. Rather, it draws out their buried, authentic worth. He reshapes the charm into a defensive armament crowned with a single oversized eye, and instead of panicking, the enemy practically salivates at the sight. Fascinated, the raider asks if this is Rudo's own vital instrument, pressing to learn every last detail. Follow then hauls Griss towards safety and tries to administer quick first aid. Rudo recalls that Griss is the reason he discovered what he genuinely wants to do. Without that push, he would still be adrift. With that in mind, he plants his feet and prepares to hit the foe hard. The raider boss says he loves strong givers and extends his clawed hands, introducing himself as Jabberwonger. Jabber chirps that he's here to have some fun and asks Rudo's name. Once the introductions are out of the way, he lights up like a madman, shouting that the two of them should tear each other apart. Then he rockets straight at Rudo. On the other side, Follow struggles to prop Grizz up, but the blood won't stop pouring. Watching Rudo fight, Grizz realizes he couldn't act before because his emotions had fogged his purpose, but now nothing is left to distract him. Back in the clash, Jabber springs backward and clings to the wall, taunting Rudo and asking why he isn't advancing. Rudo tells him to come to him instead, and the raider obliges, vaulting over Rudo with a crushing strike. He hits the floor a heartbeat later because Rudo has already slipped out of the way. Jabber follows with a storm of swipes, yet Rudo evades every last one. When Jabber finally demands to know why none of his blows land, Rudo answers that Grizz prayed for everyone to return safe and sound. Safe means unhurt, so he's prioritizing defense to keep every hostile strike from touching him. Jabber scoffs that Rudo's vital instrument looks like it only boosts his ability to evade, and he scoffs that it is worthless if Rudo cannot hit back. Rudo points out the thing Jabber has missed from the start. He hasn't shifted a single step, yet every blow keeps whiffing. The only one racing around is Jabber, which means Rudo is reading every pattern before it happens. When Jabber barrels in again, Rudo triggers his vital instrument and locks him in place. Because the talisman isn't an offensive tool, he follows with a clean, dragging punch because fists were Grizz's weapon of choice, and Rudo means to honor his buddy. Blood threads from the raider's nose, but he cackles anyway, impressed that Rudo used that ominous device to steer the exchange and finish with bare knuckles. Rudo reminds him he was the one begging for fun, and he's happy to oblige until Jabber is nothing but trash on the floor. The taunt sets Jabber off. He sneers that Rudo must be heartless to feel no guilt about being merciless, and Rudo answers that Jabber alone earns that exception. Jabber then flickers behind him to swing, but Rudo freezes him again and buries a brutal shot in his gut, sending the boss and that eerie grin skidding away. Jabber rebounds fast, ricocheting so quickly that dust veils bloom, making it impossible for Rudo's eyes to track him. He smashes pillars and hurls stone slabs from every direction, finally forcing Rudo to cover his face as Jabber charges for the finish, only for the Lucky Charm's eye to immobilize him once more. Rudo nearly caves his skull in, but Jabber slips free at the final heartbeat. Cackling like a lunatic, he lunges back in, darting even faster than before, but the ever-watchful eye locks in the instant he gets close, and Rudo blasts the lunatic away yet again. After that, the madman starts ricocheting so quickly he turns into a blur, while Rudo keeps dodging his swings and pounding him with counters. As Jabber keeps howling, Rudo shuts him up with a final 1-2 that briefly knocks him senseless and sends him staggering back until he thuds into the wall. Seeing him panting like a hound, Rudo tells him to quit already, but Jabber only grins because he hasn't been roughed up this badly in ages, and he figures Rudo did love it too. Rudo recoils at the hideous look, but the man suddenly sobers and lays out a theory. Rudo's vital instrument probably reads an enemy's murderous intent and shifts him out of danger, but he noticed while flinging those stone slabs that things without bloodlust don't trip the mechanism at all. Then, wearing a warped smile, he explains his own vital instrument Mankira, saying the right claw carries a toxin strong enough to paralyze a target until they can barely breathe. Then he suddenly drives that claw deep into his own chest. Rudo stares, baffled, while the madman laughs, savoring the pain. And that's when Jabber explains that if he blacks out from the poison and his body keeps fighting on autopilot, there will be no killing intent for the eye to sense. As he gushes about how thrilling this will be, his consciousness ebbs, and Rudo watches in mute horror as the man's body twitches. His eyes then roll back, and the wall behind him blows apart. Without warning, Jabber exploded into a wild, uncontrollable rampage, springing upright despite being completely unconscious, and unleashed a roar so powerful it felt like it could rip the air apart. Rudo stood paralyzed, stunned beyond words, as Jabber hurled himself forward in a blinding, spinning assault, tearing through everything nearby like a human battering ram. Rudo barely threw himself clear in time, completely shaken by how someone in such a state could still unleash that kind of raw, destructive force. In that moment, Rudo spotted Follow and Gris a short distance away. If Jabber's rampage shifted toward them, they wouldn't stand a chance. Without hesitating, Rudo bolted in the opposite direction to draw Jabber's attention, and the plan worked. Jabber lunged at Rudo again, and this time Rudo attempted to activate the talisman's power to halt the attack, but the artifact failed to respond the way he expected. Forced to defend himself, Rudo intercepted the blow and flipped Jabber over with a clean judo throw. Jabber's head smashed into the concrete, cracking the ground, but it did nothing to slow him down, and he rose with the same wild, blood-fueled energy. Watching this, Rudo realizes that raw combat instinct and pure resolve can push someone beyond limits. But then another thought struck him, and it's maybe Jabber's actually a masochist. His mind flashed back to his younger days on the sphere, getting picked on by local bullies. He never fought back, not because he was weak, but because Recto had told him not to. One day, the other kids mocked him, asking if he was some kind of masochist. He hadn't understood the term at the time, so he asked Recto about it when he got home. Now that he understands what it means, he figures if Jabber's one of those freaks who enjoys suffering, and he has no damn clue how to stop him. But before he could dwell on the thought any longer, Jabber continues his charge, blind with rage, and Rudo can only dodge and block where he can. He keeps retreating under the pressure, but Jabber breaks through and is about to land a deadly blow, until Zanka's staff flies in and slams Jabber to the ground. Rudo recognizes the weapon instantly, and Zanka arrives a moment later, barely standing, but fueled by the need to settle things with the opponent who walked away before finishing their fight. Rudo asks if he's in any shape to keep going, but Zanka tells him not to insult him. Then he notices the item Rudo's using and comments that he's finally getting the hang of it. Rudo responds that it's not doing much, since it doesn't stop Jabber in this crazed form. Zanka quickly picks up on how the talisman only responds when there's real hostile intent, and Rudo is caught off guard by how fast he figured that out. Zanka explains that while he was struggling to get there, he had watched Rudo's fight from afar. He decided to analyze his technique so it would help him later when it came time to train him properly. Zanka points out that since Rudo can't utilize the talisman offensively, and his own movements are severely hindered by the poison, neither of them currently has a way to take Jabber down. But he has a plan, and he asks Rudo to let him strike him just once. Rudo is taken aback by the request, but Zanka clarifies, if he attacks with genuine hostile intent, the talisman might react by transporting Rudo to the exact spot where Zanka wants to be. That would allow him to get close enough to land a critical blow. Rudo asks what happens if the talisman doesn't activate, to which Zanka simply replies that he'll just have to take the hit like a man. Before they can discuss it further, Jabber regains consciousness, so the two prepare themselves as he charges forward and slices clean through the stone pillar near them, but both manage to avoid the strike. Zanka then warns Rudo not to let even a scratch from those claws land because any contact would cause paralysis. Zanka becomes angry after saying that because he remembers what happened to him, so he decides to let out his rage by swinging at Rudo. And just as planned, the talisman triggers, launching Zanka directly toward Jabber and allowing him to deliver a solid blow that sends him flying. Zanka is impressed it worked, but Rudo is furious because the fact that the talisman reacted proves Zanka really meant to hurt him. But Zanka brushes it off, saying it was just an experimental test. He then walks back toward Rudo and casually says the two of them might actually make a good team. And as Jabber recovers and rushes toward them again, Zanka swings once more. The talisman responds, launching him forward again, and Zanka uses the momentum to crash into Jabber with another brutal strike. Surprised by how accurately Rudo can control the ability, Zanka notes that the range is quite significant, and without wasting time, he hits Rudo again, and the talisman propels him straight toward the enemy. This time, Zanka connects with a devastating combo that finally rattles Jabber's senses and starts bringing him back to normal. As Zanka landed and tried to steady himself, his legs gave out and he collapsed to the ground. Believing the fight was finally over, he let his guard down, and Rudo did the same. In that moment, the talisman began to glow faintly before suddenly disintegrating into fine dust, crumbling away like it had been erased from existence. Rudo's eyes widened in horror because the artifact was Gris's, and now it was gone. He tried to reach out and catch what was left of it, but the remnants scattered through the air, slipping through his fingers. Panic surged through him, and he started to break down. Zanka, watching closely, questioned whether the talisman had shattered due to Rudo's ability, or if something deeper was going on. Rudo, on the other hand, blamed himself entirely. The emotional collapse quickly turned physical, and his body twisted uncontrollably as he hit the ground, shaking violently like a fish thrown onto dry land. Then Zanka noticed something alarming: claw wounds along Rudo's back. At some point, Jabber had struck him without them realizing. At that exact moment, Jabber poked himself with his own left claw and stood upright again, fully alert and seemingly unharmed. Glancing around the wrecked area, he casually commented that he must have done a solid job while in his berserk state. With no remorse, he started walking toward Rudo. Zanka shouted at him to stop, demanding to know how he was still moving after taking such punishment. Jabber paused and began explaining that his left claw contained a powerful anesthetic that nullified pain, allowing him to operate as if nothing happened. He added that the venom from his right claw, which had already taken effect on Zanka, should keep him paralyzed for about 30 more minutes, but just to be safe, he decided to give Zanka another dose. Zanka couldn't resist, and Jabber plunged the claw into him again, leaving him gasping on the ground, barely able to breathe. With his only obstacle removed, Jabber casually approached Rudo, still trembling and unable to move. Without a word, he picked him up and began carrying him away. Zanka lay helpless, unable to even call out. He could only watch as Rudo was taken, powerless to stop it. At the same time, Jabber walked on, satisfied that his mission was accomplished, and he didn't even spare a thought for his two downed teammates back in the ruins. As for Rudo, he's still conscious inside his immobilized body and was overwhelmed with guilt, blaming himself entirely for putting everyone's lives on the line. Right then, Jabber launched himself through the hole in the floor left by one of his teammates. But instead of landing inside another room, he suddenly found himself outside. That wasn't supposed to happen because he clearly remembered the map layout. As confusion set in, he spotted Rio already waiting for him. Before he could react, Injin appeared at her side and struck him hard in the stomach with his umbrella, sending him crashing into a nearby wall with bone-shaking impact. Somehow, Jabber managed to stay conscious, and through his dazed vision, he noticed that Injin wasn't alone and several other intimidating cleaners were standing beside him. It turned out the support staff who escaped earlier had sent out a call for help, and Injin's group had been close enough to respond just in time. One of the support members anxiously asked if Gris and the others might have been killed. Injin reassured her that they were tougher than that, and they wouldn't go down so easily. He then instructed her to assemble a team and go rescue them. Meanwhile, Jabber began shouting at the group, clearly overwhelmed by their presence. He admitted they looked terrifying and that he wasn't in any shape to fight, and the sense of powerlessness only thrilled him more. Injin, visibly disturbed, realized in that moment that Rudo had been going toe-to-toe with a total masochist this whole time. Rio drily commented that Rudo looked better than she expected, while some of the other cleaners muttered that he looked even worse than they had imagined. The big guy gets pissed off, saying it was unacceptable for someone to harm one of their own, but another member immediately told him to shut it, annoyed by his loud reaction. Injin then stepped forward and told Jabber that he was under arrest and would be taken in for questioning. He asked if Jabber really believed he could go after the cleaners and then disappear into the shadows like nothing happened. That only makes Jabber more excited, and he blurts out if they're gonna throw him in some lifelong cell where he has to scheme up an escape plan all by himself. Rising to his feet, he admitted he knew he was going to lose. Still, he had orders to bring Rudo back, and he wasn't going to return to base as a failure, even if it cost him his life. He activated his weapons once more, bracing for a final clash. But just as he was about to charge, someone grabbed him from behind in a tight embrace, whispering for him to stop. Jabber instantly recognized the one holding him back, and it was one of his fellow operatives. He told her to let go, insisting he still had a mission to complete. But she quietly reminded him that their time was up, and there was nothing more they could do now that the cleaners had arrived. Still unwilling to back down, Jabber remained fixated on his objective. But then she mentioned that their boss had been smiling with a genuine, wide smile. That comment made him freeze in place, and she tightened her arms around him, keeping him from making any reckless moves. After a moment's hesitation, Jabber finally gave in and agreed to retreat. As he stepped aside, a shimmering manhole-shaped portal appeared in the wall behind him. Turning back to the others, Jabber calmly announced that he was leaving. He asked them to pass along his regards to Rudo, assuming the poison had knocked him out by now. But to his surprise, Rudo was still conscious. Summoning all the strength left in his body, he forced himself to his feet and shouted at Jabber to stop because their fight wasn't finished. And Jabber raised an eyebrow, impressed by his resolve. Rudo then promised that he would make him pay for what he did to Gris and the others, and Jabber smiled, clearly entertained, and replied that they'd settle things another time. Then he noticed the gloves Rudo was wearing because the design on them caught his attention. His face lit up with excitement as he remarked that the boss would be thrilled to hear Rudo had something from the limited special series. Then, without wasting another second, he follows the lowly girl into the portal, and once he dropped the cover into place, the portal vanished without a trace, leaving everyone around stunned by what they'd just witnessed. Later, Zanka and the others were successfully extracted from the building. The effects of the poison eventually faded from Rudo's body, so he rushed to Gris's side. Gris was still alive, though severely wounded and losing blood. Rudo apologized, distraught over the destruction of the talisman. Gris, though weak, admitted it had meant a lot to him. Rudo nearly collapsed under the weight of guilt, but Gris gave him a faint smile and said that if the talisman ended up helping him, then it had served its purpose. As he finished speaking, the last remaining fragments of the talisman scattered into the wind, and Rudo stood there quietly, unsure of how to feel. Later at Cleaner HQ, Engine sits next to Rudo, who is clearly in a bad mood. The boy sits quietly, eyes glued to the floor, not saying a word, so Engine asks what he's up to, but gets no response. Trying to lighten the atmosphere a bit, Engine casually mentions he heard Rudo manage to activate his vital instrument, tossing out a low-key compliment in hopes of cheering him up. But suddenly, Rudo snaps, yelling that Gris was seriously wounded, and he has no idea how he's supposed to face him now. With frustration, Rudo admits he's always felt useless because he couldn't help anyone back on the sphere, and even now in the underground, he feels just as powerless. Frustrated, he curses himself and declares he's never going to change. Engine listens without interruption, then calmly tells him that Gris put his life on the line for his comrades, not because Rudo was special, but because Gris believed in him, and that alone was reason enough. Engine then bluntly tells Rudo to quit sulking and go see Gris at the infirmary. When Rudo arrives at the hospital, his jaw practically hits the floor when he sees Gris looking completely okay, and Gris greets him with a huge grin and congratulates him for finally awakening his power. Still stunned, Rudo blinks and stares again, barely believing what he's seeing. That's when Engine bursts into loud laughter, realizing Rudo was moping around thinking Gris had already died. He ruffles Rudo's hair, laughing even harder as the poor kid turns bright red from embarrassment. Rudo fires back that anyone would have thought Gris was a goner after taking damage that severe, but Gris chuckles and explains he was saved thanks to the top-tier medical team at Cleaner Headquarters, and more importantly, thanks to the quiet girl standing next to his bed. He introduces her as Aishia, the only known giver whose abilities allow her to heal others. As Gris praises her, Aishia looks away awkwardly and says she just got lucky. Engine chimes in, explaining she's painfully shy and gets overwhelmed when people compliment her. To prove his point, Gris thanks her again, and she turns bright red on the spot. Gris then turns to Follow and tells him he shouldn't carry any guilt either. After all, Follow was the one who shielded him from the Raiders' final blow. His words strike deep, and the young supporter tears up from the heartfelt praise. Then looking back at Rudo, Gris gives him a nod of respect for teaming up with Zanka and putting the Raider in the dirt. Finally, he tells Rudo to stop worrying about the lucky charm because he gave it away with pride. because he knew Rudo was someone who would understand its real worth. Those words finally put Rudo's heart at ease, and he tells Gris he's just happy he made it out alive. Engine turns to the group and informs them that the battle between the cleaners and the raiders has officially begun, and from now on, trash beasts won't be their only threat on the battlefield. Just as he's about to share new intel, the door swings open, and a towering man steps inside, casually announcing that it seems the raiders are targeting the sphere as well. Rudo immediately blurts out, asking who the hell the guy is, and Engine casually replies that's the boss, and it takes him a full minute to comprehend that the boss is standing right in front of him. The man then apologizes for not being around when Rudo first joined, and then properly introduces himself as Arca Corvus. He admits he might not look like much of a leader, but assures everyone he is in charge. He confesses that at first he thought Rudo might just be tagging along for intel, and if that were the case, he wouldn't have kept him around. But after seeing Rudo risk his life for his teammates, Corvus says he respects that kind of commitment. He acknowledges Rudo's strength and tells him he's earned his place here. With that, Corvus officially welcomes him into the team and instructs him to meet him in his office, where a uniform and mission briefing are already waiting. When Rudo arrives, Corvus tells him about a deadly border that lies between the surface and the sphere, and anyone who tries to cross it is doomed to die. As Rudo changes into his new gear, Corvus shares a strange story. He tells him about a woman who lived in the Forbidden Zone, the area closest to the border. One day, she saved a lost traveler who asked what she was doing out there, and she told him she spent her time watching the spheres fall from the sky. And over the years, she claimed she'd seen a few rare individuals cross that deadly border, survive the impossible, and return alive. That revelation strikes a nerve in Rudo because if those people exist, he needs to find them to understand how they managed to get to Sphere and why he survived when he fell. Corvus then asks if Rudo plans to stay or leave, and with clenched teeth and burning resolve, Rudo answers without hesitation that he's going back. Right then, the door slams open and Engine walks in, hyped to see Rudo in his new uniform. Not long after, Rudo quietly makes his way toward the Forbidden Zone, determined to track down the woman and uncover the truth. But just as he's slipping away, Fall catches up to him, grabbing his arm and pleading with him to turn back. But Rudo is done waiting because all that matters to him now is finding the way back as fast as he can. Engine then walks in and advises Rudo to take a breath, insisting that if he's serious about going there, then he should at least prepare properly. He points out that charging in without gathering intel or testing his abilities sounds like someone with a death wish, so Engine tries to help him understand the importance of recognizing his own flaws and limitations. Then when Rudo asks whether Engine plans to go with him, he responds that he will, and adds that attempting it alone would only lead to a quick end. As Rudo reflects on the fact that Engine once made that trip by himself, Engine begins explaining further. He says that aside from combat, cleaners are expected to collect valuable intel about trash beasts and raiders. Rudo grumbles, clearly bothered by how people as cruel as the raiders ever ended up with the title of givers, but Engine replies bluntly, saying kindness isn't a requirement. He explains that there are sharp-dressed men who treat their belongings like garbage, and rugged-looking ones who cherish what little they have, so being a giver has nothing to do with morality or appearance. Rudo lowers his gaze, feeling conflicted, wondering whether he's the one in the wrong. But even so, the bitterness inside him toward the people who cast him aside remains. Seeing that he's not in the right mindset, Engine tells him to call it a day and rest. Later that night, Rudo lies in his room, drowning in boredom and wishing he had something to do, like dumpster diving. That's when Rio barges in with her usual enthusiasm, offering to give him the grand tour of headquarters. She drags him through the gym, the dining area, and for some odd reason, even the men's restroom. Along the way, she explains that while the facility might look like a crumbling mess, it's the people inside that give it life. But Rudo disagrees and says the sphere felt far more alive. Every day there, he went out scavenging with Recto, digging through junk, hunting for treasures, and getting yelled at by the cops. Ryo laughs and says there are plenty of folks around here who would love to yell at him too. Then she shifts the subject to food, asking if he's ever tasted real sweets. Rudo freezes when he hears her say that because sweets were the kind of luxury only the upper class ever got to enjoy. But Rio proudly claims that even down here, they have access to the good stuff. And a moment later, Rudo's eyes nearly shoot out of his head as he sees a handful of glossy candies the cleaners buy from a group called the Vanders. He turns to Engine, wide-eyed, and tells him that he's never had candy before in his entire life. Engine then tells him that while the situation on the surface is different, down here in the underground, candy is in higher demand than narcotics. He casually warns Rudo not to get hooked, since the temptation is very real. As Rio practically drools over a full tray of sugar-loaded delights, Engine explains that the Vianders hire some of the finest chefs around, which is why their confections are said to surpass even the ones found on the sphere. Rio nudges Rudo to give it a shot, and with shaky hands and glimmering eyes, he lifts a piece toward his mouth. The moment it touches his tongue, it's like his soul nearly exits his body in pure bliss. He immediately enters a feeding frenzy, scarfing down candy with uncontrollable hands like some sugar-starved beast. Engine quickly warns him to ease up or else he's going to start putting on weight. But what finally halts the sugar rampage isn't the warning. It's the icy, soul-piercing glare of a toddler chewing on a pacifier. The kid's eyes carry judgment deeper than the abyss, and Rudo suddenly wonders if he's about to be challenged for his sweets. Trying to avoid conflict, he awkwardly offers a lollipop as a peace offering. But the toddler snatches it hard and barks at him to give him more, which immediately ticks Rudo off. Sometime later, Zanka passes by and hears Engine and Rio chatting about Rudo's growing obsession with candy. He pays it no mind until he sees something jiggling its way out of a doorway. Alarmed, he yells that there's an intruder, only to realize it's just Rudo. But now he looks like Luffy after clearing out every last bite of the crew's food, and diabetes practically radiates off of him. The following morning at the training center, Rudo struggles to activate his power during a test. Even after getting used to it, he still can't seem to trigger it on command. While he beats himself up about it, Zanka walks over with a pile of junk and tells him to choose something from it and give it another shot. Rudo picks out a triangular scrap of metal and channels energy into it. This time, the reaction is immediate. The item glows faintly and increases in size. Engine, watching from the side, admits Zanka might actually be onto something this time, and gives him props for being a decent instructor after all. Zanka then proposes that Rudo push things further by trying to weaponize multiple items at the same time, and to everyone's shock, it actually works. First a teapot, then a worn-out doll, but as soon as Rudo pulls out a third object, blood begins dripping from his nose, and he drops to the ground. Engine immediately notes that this mirrors what happened before, and his nosebleed must be a sign that his gloves are simply too high in quality for his body to handle. He explains that the more someone cares for something, the more value it accumulates, and in turn, the greater power it holds when converted. Alongside raw strength, the resulting ability is also influenced by the user's intent, memories, and emotional connection. Zanka starts speculating aloud, assuming Rudo must have been taking care of those gloves since he was a kid. That would explain the absurd quality, but even then, he can't shake the feeling that this level of backlash is still excessive. The idea makes him uneasy, and his thoughts start spiraling into the possibilities of deeper item mechanics. Rudo, still catching his breath, pushes back on that theory, and he says if that's true, then why do most of the things he weaponizes end up breaking? But when he crafts something on the spot, those items stay intact, so he starts wondering if maybe there's a time limit involved. Raiva steps in with a smile and offers a different perspective. She suggests that maybe it's because those discarded things have no lingering regrets. She says it seems like Rudo's ability draws out the full worth of items that were once abandoned, and when he reuses them, they finally fulfill their purpose, and that release might be why they vanish afterward. Zanka agrees and brings up how the talisman disintegrated the moment Rudo felt a wave of relief after their battle. Engine adds that Rudo didn't technically break Grizz's talisman or any of the weapons he creates. Instead, Rudo is tapping into what's left of them and pushing that value to its limit. Hearing that, Rudo glances down at his gloves and realizes something. His ability was never about destruction. It was always about honoring what remained. Rio, clearly thinking along the same lines as Zanka, brings up how Jabber mentioned the gloves being part of a series, and that implies there could be others like them out there. While Rudo is still trying to wrap his head around that, Rio encourages him to give the gloves a proper name. She says she already named hers, and Engine nods in approval. Elsewhere, Thani and Jabber finally return to their boss, who's already rambling about the Cleaners, the City of Art, the Desert Altar, Vital Instruments, Equipment Series, and something he calls the Watchman Series, which he appears to be wearing himself. Late at night, Rudo is carefully rinsing off his gloves, wincing from the sting in his palms, and when he steps out of the washroom, he freezes in shock upon seeing Rio stretched out across his bed, shamelessly showing off her missiles with zero concern. His brain nearly locks up at the unexpected sight, and he blurts out, asking her what on earth she's doing in his room. So Rio calmly replies that her room is just one floor above his, and she clearly overheard him groaning and mumbling like a drama queen in pain. And out of concern, she decided to climb down through the window just to make sure he was okay. Everything makes sense now, and Rudo relaxes a bit. Rio asks if he was in pain because of the awful-looking injuries on his hands. He instinctively hides his hands behind his back and tells her that they hurt a lot less when he has his gloves on, but they still need washing every now and then. She studies the marks on his skin and says they look even worse than third-degree burns. When she asks how he got them, Rudo replies bitterly that she should go ask his bastard parents, and she understands right away. With a dry chuckle, she mutters that parents pass down a lot of things, and trauma usually tops that list. The following morning, Engine brings Rudo in to meet the boss, who mentions that while they're still waiting for his full face to be ready, Engine should handle the remaining prep work. Rudo is puzzled by the phrase, and Engine explains that full face refers to the standard issue mask that every cleaner wears when entering no man's land. Engine then pulls out his own mask to show Rudo and explains that their masks are custom made by an in-house artist. The problem is that the artist got the attention span of a fly and shuts down completely if anyone even hints at a deadline. And now he's currently working on Rudo's mask, but who knows how long it'll take. Corvus then says they'll proceed with the next part of the prep, which involves placing a spell on Rudo. That only adds to Rudo's confusion until the hot black chick explains that the garbage zones are filled with unpredictable dangers. So to boost the odds of survival, another artist draws protective spells on each cleaner. And the boss gives the artist total freedom to paint whatever he wants, so he occasionally decorates the HQ walls too, but lately he's been off working in another city. Engine tells Rudo that he's heading to the city of graffiti Candace Town to track down this eccentric painter, and he's assembling a full squad for the trip. Alongside him are Zanka and Rio, Gris, and Follow, and a few members from his own crew, and he introduces them to Rudo one by one. Normally, they take 5 supporters per mission, but since No Man's Land is a higher risk zone, they're cutting down the number of support members to just 3 elite picks and increasing the count of givers instead. Right then, a towering man named Delman arrives, and Rudo is immediately thrown off by his sheer presence. Without warning, Delman starts shouting right into Rudo's face, saying he's heard his backstory, and it ticks him off that the people living in the sphere discriminate between humans. He claims to respect fiery types like Rudo and attempts to recruit him into his own squad. But before anything escalates, his partner Tamsi shows up and steps in to stop him. Tamsi calmly reminds him that since Engine already brought Rudo into his team, it's not right for them to poach him. At that moment, Engine walks over and casually tells Delman to give one of his iconic motivational speeches. As Delman grinds his teeth and gets ready, Zanka quickly covers his ears just in time. Delman then launches into a thunderous declaration about never surrendering no matter how tough the road gets. The energy is wild, and after standing around looking lost for a few seconds, Rudo ends up getting swept into the moment, screaming right along with the rest of them like an idiot. But once everyone piles into the vehicle headed for Candace Town, the energy vanishes and silence fills the car. Before long, their destination appears on the horizon, and Rudo's eyes widen in awe. Even from far away, the city looks like one massive piece of artwork. As they pull up to the gates, Rudo notices the outer walls are completely covered in graffiti. Still, what really grabs his attention is the giant dome structure at the center. Tamsi explains that most cities have protective domes to shield them from the garbage constantly falling from the sphere, because even a single chunk of litter from up there can be deadly. Rudo feels a pang of guilt, but Tamsi tells him not to blame himself. The real fault lies with the ones who throw the trash down in the first place. Meanwhile, 2 men standing at the gate are struggling to get into the city. Even though the entrance looks wide open, they keep bumping into something invisible and unseen while stopping them. Just then, Engine and his group walk right through the gate like it's nothing. The 2 outsiders stare in confusion, and so does Rudo. Engine tells him not to overthink it, because as long as he doesn't have any malicious intent, the gate will let him pass. Rudo takes a step forward, walks straight through, and realizes instantly that the 2 getting stuck are probably up to no good. Once they're inside, Rudo notices even more murals and spray art decorating the walls, with empty paint cans scattered across the streets like confetti. Engine explains to Rudo that plenty of people on the surface enjoy painting, but most of the time, their creativity isn't taken seriously. There's a popular belief that Candace Town was founded so that artists could express themselves freely, painting wherever and whatever they wanted without restriction. Rudo then asks if their visit is just to admire the artwork scattered across the city, but Engine clarifies that their real objective is to find a giver whose art can cast defensive enchantments on anything he touches. Rudo doesn't quite follow, so Engine offers a clearer example. He explains that if this giver wants to shield a structure from an incoming blow, he channels his emotions into his vital instrument, then transforms that emotion into a magical seal by painting it directly onto the surface. He also adds that the two shady guys who were unable to pass through the gate earlier were stopped by one of these spells, one that prevents anyone with ill intentions from stepping into the city. Rudo says that kind of power sounds insane, and Engine agrees, noting that the man's vital instrument is extremely rare. He tries to go into more detail, mentioning that the giver had inherited it from someone else. But before he can finish, a child darts around the corner and slams right into him, falling to the ground. Engine tries to help the kid up, but the boy bursts into tears and bolts off. Engine stands there, speechless, while Rio bursts out laughing, teasing him for scaring the poor kid into crying. A moment later, the mayor of Candace Town arrives, and Engine's expression lights up because he's happy to see him. He tells the mayor that they came to meet with their friend Gob because they got a new assignment for him. But the mayor, with a heavy expression, delivers heartbreaking news. Gob passed away earlier that morning. He leads the group to Gob's residence, then explains that the cause of death was body pollution. Gob was never content painting only inside the city. He ventured into the toxic zones to leave his mark there as well. The mayor believes that Gob often forgot to wear his mask during these trips, and the poisonous air gradually destroyed his body from the inside out. The news hits Engine hard, and as he quietly stands by, paying his respects to his fallen friend, Rudo recalls seeing Gob back at the HQ, working on a mural. He remembers how highly Engine spoke of him then, describing him as someone who never strayed from his purpose, no matter what. Rudo feels shaken as he tries to digest the reality of Gob's death, but Tamsi, noticing the look in his eyes, tells him not to let it get to him too much. Losses like this aren't rare on the surface, and many lives are taken by body pollution before they even realize what's happening. The mayor then explains that before his passing, Gob had already chosen who would inherit his role, and it turns out to be none other than the child named Remlin, the same kid Engine accidentally collided with earlier. He goes on to describe how the title of spellcaster is passed down directly by the previous bearer of the magical brush, and that the chosen individual instantly becomes a giver the moment they receive it. However, the mayor admits that placing such a heavy responsibility on someone as young as Remlin feels overwhelming, especially since the city's spellcaster acts as a symbol and protector for everyone who lives here. Rudo is taken aback by this revelation, but Fall and Tamsi explain that it's incredibly rare for a vital instrument to be passed down. Still, it makes sense. Since the brush's power is already awakened, it simply needs someone with the right potential to take it on. The mayor then adds that Gob and Remlin were like siblings, so she'll need some time to process the loss. He informs Engine that their cleaner team will likely face a delay because of all this, but Engine reassures him. They're not in any rush, not during a moment this fragile. But just then, the mayor breaks down in tears and says that Gob painted with such pure joy that it's hard to accept he's really gone. Engine relates completely because he still remembers the awe he felt every time he saw Gob painting, always smiling, full of life. Engine decides it's best for them to come back later once things have settled, but before they leave, he gently tells Remlin to take care of herself. And just as he finishes speaking, Remlin suddenly gets to her feet and declares that there's no time left for sulking. Everyone is caught off guard, then she grabs the enchanted brush straight out of the mayor's hands and bolts outside. The whole group follows her and finds her standing on a rooftop surrounded by cans of paint. She looks up at the sky and says that even though she's grieving, she knows Gob wouldn't want people to be crying over him. That's why she's going to honor him the way he would have wanted, by celebrating life and art. Then, without hesitating, she activates the brush, enlarging it with magic and drawing a glowing spell circle across the rooftop. And within seconds, the paint cans transform, morphing into fireworks launchers powered by the enchantment. As streaks of color shoot into the sky and explode into vibrant shapes, the people of Candace Town begin flooding the streets, inspired by the display. With renewed spirit, they rush to grab their brushes and paints, pouring their emotions into murals across the city. Remlin watches it all while her eyes shine and says that this is exactly the kind of farewell Gob would have loved. And as Rudo stands there, watching beneath the lights of the fireworks, he can't help but be filled with amazement. Soon after, Remlin decides it's time to add her latest artistic vision to Rudo's face, and she's feeling pretty smug about the results. She's transformed him into a full-blown clown, complete with absurd face paint and exaggerated colors. Rudo is clearly unimpressed, scowling as Remlin bursts into laughter every time she looks at him. And while Rudo starts yelling in protest, voice rising with each complaint, Engine tells the mayor that they've finally figured out what qualities the previous spellcasters had been seeking in their replacement. The mayor nods, saying that Remlin is just as eccentric and unpredictable as Gob used to be. Curious, Engine asks how many spellcasters there have been in total, and the mayor estimates that Remlin is probably the 6th, since spellcasters only leave their legacy behind through their artwork. While that's going on, Remlin turns to Rudo and formally introduces herself, asking what kind of design he wants her to draw and where exactly. She begins explaining her ability, specifically how her magic works best when she has permission to draw in a given space. That lines up with what Engine remembers about Gob, so he turns to the mayor and asks if every spellcaster inherits the same sort of magic. The mayor explains that their abilities usually look similar, though there are always slight variations. Engine figures that the vital instrument must give them the same core ability, with the differences coming from the user's personality. But Remlin flat out tells him he's wrong. According to her, the reason their powers end up resembling each other is because they're all lunatics who treat the battlefield like a sketchbook. She says they paint balloons and sunflowers in the middle of chaos because their art is about freedom and rebellion. That she believes is what really guides each spellcaster when choosing a successor. Engine just stares at her, trying to wrap his head around what she's saying. He guesses again that maybe they just think alike, so their powers look similar, but Remlin shoots that down too. She says they each have a different mindset, and they create wildly different things, which only leaves Engine more confused than before. But before he can press further, the mayor cuts in and tells him not to bother because arguing with an artist would only increase your confusion. Anyway, Rudo finally speaks up and tells Remlin he wants something drawn on his back, something strong enough to block a single serious blow. Remlin's eyes light up, and she immediately gets to work. Her brush transforms into a buzzing tattoo gun, ready to ink the design into his skin permanently. The mayor and Engine are both stunned because at first they thought she just happened to find a tattoo gun somewhere. But now it's clear, her brush can morph into any tool she needs, depending on what she's trying to create. Eventually, they manage to stop Remlin before she turns Rudo's entire back into permanent ink. She admits that if she just used regular water-based paint, the spell would come off the moment Rudo took a shower. But she quickly hatches a new idea, just as chaotic as a tattoo, and asks for Rudo's permission to draw something on him without telling him which tool she's going to use. Rudo agrees reluctantly, and without skipping a beat, Remlin ends up applying enchantments not only to Rudo but also to everyone else in the group. With that handled, the team gets ready to leave. Casting spells on 9 people at once has left Remlin totally wiped, but she still walks them all the way to the gate. When they get there, they run into the same 2 clowns from earlier, and the moment they spot Remlin holding the brush, their egos flare up. Furious, they turn to the mayor and ask how he could let a brat like her take on the mantle of spellcaster. They argue that either of them would have been a way better fit for the role. One even brags about winning some big-name art contest, insisting that he has what it takes to become a proper spellcaster, unlike some punk kid. The mayor doesn't entertain it for a second. He explodes on them with full authority and instantly silences both. He calls them out for being a bunch of fakes who only care about attention and popularity, and says they'll never understand what it truly means to bear the title of spellcaster. He then tells them to get lost immediately because no one in Candace City wants to lay eyes on their sorry faces again. The 2 wannabes back off, utterly deflated, and leave without another word. Engine chuckles afterward, saying the mayor is still terrifying when he's angry, and jokes that he should probably stay away from the gate before his blood pressure spikes again. With that, everyone piles into the car, and as they drive off, Rudo turns to Remlin and thanks her for casting the spell on him. She gives him a smug little grin and says she'll come mess around at the HGs sometime soon. Engine hits the gas, and Rudo assumes they're heading back to the base. Engine nods, but says before they get there to pick up his face mask, Rudo is in for something special. Rudo doesn't know what to expect until they pull up to a warehouse packed wall-to-wall with pristine junk. His eyes light up, and his mouth practically waters at the sight of perfectly salvageable gadgets and devices everywhere. Engine tells him to take his time and pick whatever catches his eye because there aren't any trash beasts around here, so it's all safe. Rudo goes full goblin mode, diving headfirst into the heaps of junk, searching for the best stuff he can restore and repurpose. Engine just watches and smiles, seeing with his own eyes how obsessed Rudo truly is when it comes to garbage. Neither of them notices, though, that a small television perched at the top of the pile has flickered to life, showing the image of a man wearing gloves strikingly similar to Rudo's. After some time, Rudo and the crew arrive back at headquarters, only to be welcomed by some eccentric guys screaming that it's finally done. Rudo has no idea who this lunatic even is or what he's raving about, and before anyone can clue him in, Semyu steps forward and says she heard about Gov's passing. But before she can even finish offering her sympathy, the weirdo abruptly cuts her off to tell Rudo that his mask is ready. That's when Engine steps in to introduce the man as August, saying he's the one in charge of their equipment, And as an artist, he's also a bit unhinged. August immediately starts bragging about how this latest piece is his masterpiece. He proudly explains that even though he never spoke to Rudo before, he still managed to get his facial dimensions while Rudo was asleep, and also got a full personality brief from the rest of the gang. Rudo is absolutely horrified to hear that August snuck into his room and measured his face while he was knocked out, but August just brushes it off and laughs that it was Rudo's fault for not locking the door. Rio casually adds that Rudo hardly ever sleeps anyway, so August managing to catch him at the right time was basically a miracle. At that moment, the shy nurse from earlier storms over and scolds August, telling him to stop being so loud because he's making her look bad in front of everyone. He completely ignores her, of course, and Rudo just stares at the two of them, baffled by how these polar opposite weirdos could possibly be related by blood. Anyway, with all that behind them, the group gets ready to move out for their next operation. Once they step outside, Injin tells Rudo to take off his choker for a second. Rudo hesitates but complies, and the second he does, all the other cleaners slice or jab their fingers to draw a bit of blood and press it onto the choker. Rudo is totally weirded out by this creepy vampire-style ceremony, but Injin explains that these chokers double as communication gear, and they only work when you've shared blood with someone. That's how the cleaners can talk to each other remotely. Rudo asks if that's why everyone on the surface wears one, and Rio confirms, saying they basically work like phones. She also jokes that blood sharing gives off a real friends to the end feel, which makes the whole thing sound cooler. Rudo straps the choker back on and starts wondering what kind of sci-fi tech powers this thing, before guessing it's probably another strange ability granted by a giver. Just as he's spacing out, he snaps back to reality to find everyone staring at him with sinister grins. They remind him that his blood still hasn't been added to the network yet, and Rudo goes pale. With the blood-sharing ritual officially wrapped up, the team finally hops into the car and drives toward the no man's land in search of the woman who supposedly knows how the barrier works. Rudo brought a whole pile of random junk from the scrapyard earlier, and Injin warns him that most of it's going to be useless since they'll have to go on foot once they're inside the no man's land. Still, Rudo insists it's all backup, because you never know which item might come in handy out there. Not long after, they arrive at the red desert known as Penta, one of the 5 no man's lands scattered across this world. Tamsi is the first to jump down into the red terrain, but upon closer inspection, he realizes that it's not made of sand at all. It's actually entirely rust. Right then, he spots a trash beast charging at them from a distance, and the rest of the crew clocks it too. Injin decides this is a good chance to give Rudo his first official hunt as a cleaner. Rudo wastes no time, sliding down the rust dunes with his new face gear locked in place. As the battle kicks off, their female supporter starts scribbling detailed notes about the type of trash beasts they're up against. Meanwhile, Ryo goes full beast mode, taking on 3 scorpion-shaped monsters at once and shredding them apart with her giant combat scissors. One of the scorpion limbs ends up tumbling away and slamming into another trash beast nearby. That one wrongly assumes Zanka attacked it since he's standing right in front of it, so the beast lunges at him, forcing Zanka to dodge and weave until he sees an opening. Then he goes on the offensive by striking the creature's jaw with his staff and unleashing the weapon's true power, a line of spikes that shoot out and pierce through the monster's skull, killing it instantly. But he doesn't get a break yet, because even more beasts begin surrounding him. Just as he's bracing for another round, Injin suddenly drops in from above, using one of his signature moves to wipe out all the trash monsters except one. Rudo steps forward and says he'll handle this one solo, charging at it while pulling a dusty old keyboard from his bag. As he activates his ability, the latent potential of the keyboard awakens, and far away, deep in the desert, a woman senses something strange in the air. Back on the field, Rudo becomes the keyboard warrior every online troll thinks they are. But his typing speed is like someone's grandma learning to use Facebook, but the moment he slams the enter key, the keyboard levitates. The buttons float high into the sky before raining down on the scorpion beast like high-velocity bullets, spelling out the word jerk across its shell just before it evaporates into ash. With that, all the monsters are eliminated, and Injin gets to work inspecting the piles of salvage buried beneath the layers of rust. And at the same time, Grizz begins lecturing the support girl for jotting things down, while everyone else was in the middle of combat. He warns her that not paying full attention during a fight is risky, and could get her killed, but she calmly replies that if she doesn't record her observations in real time, she'll forget them once the battle ends. At the same time, Rudo is busy brushing off the sand and grime clinging to his new mask when he catches a faint glimpse of a woman through the swirling dust. But before he can even take a step toward her, Delman and Tamsi suddenly appear behind him. Delman's thunderous voice causes Rudo to stumble backwards in shock, and the big guy complains that he couldn't get a good look at Rudo's debut fight thanks to all the sand flying around. Rudo thinks to himself that at least he's finally proving useful, but then Delman abruptly goes quiet and locks eyes on something ahead of them. Rudo follows his line of sight, and he's stunned to see a girl casually strolling through the desert haze toward them. She looks cheerful, completely unbothered by the harsh terrain, and is definitely not dressed for this place. Both Delman and Tamsi tense up, realizing they didn't even notice her approach. Soon, the whole squad gathers, and Engine wonders if this could be the mysterious woman from the stories, the one said to have witnessed people fall from the sphere and somehow return again. Zanka thinks it's too early to have found her, but Engine suggests they try to speak with the girl and ask for directions just in case. Rio, however, wastes no time beating around the bush and bluntly asks the girl if she's ever seen anyone come down from the sphere or try going back. The girl nods cheerfully, and Rio announces to everyone that they found exactly who they were searching for. Engine comments that luck is finally on their side, but just then, the girl who introduces herself as Emo starts coughing. So she invites them all to her house so they can talk more comfortably, saying that the air in the open desert isn't good for them. Rio starts to grow suspicious and quietly asks Engine if maybe she should go alone to check things out, but he decides it's better for the entire group to go. His reasoning is simple: if the girl turns out to be a threat, at least everyone will be present and ready to handle it. Unfortunately, that logic backfires completely because when they arrive at Amo's home, a bizarre little place cluttered with plush toys and unsettling dolls, Engine suddenly keels over and vomits before passing out cold. Now Rudo's the only one left conscious, and as he looks around trying to figure out what the hell is happening, Amo turns to him with a wide, wicked grin. An hour before everything went downhill, Amo led the squad to her hideout, a bizarrely tall stone tower standing alone in the heart of the desert. When Engine saw it, he realized he'd passed by it multiple times before, but had always brushed it off as just some abandoned relic. She then gestured for them to head inside, and the moment they stepped through the entrance, the place gave off an unmistakably eerie vibe. The atmosphere was so unsettling, it immediately put Gris on edge. As Amo held her lantern up to light the way, she casually warned them that the living room was a complete mess and suggested they head up to her room instead if they wanted any real hospitality. That's when the crew started feeling a bit suspicious of her, but since they didn't have any concrete reason to call her out, they figured they'd just roll with it. As they moved upstairs, she told them to ditch their masks, claiming that the awful outdoor stench couldn't reach inside, so it was safe to breathe. Plus, she added that going into her room while hiding their faces was just plain rude. Once they were up, everyone removed their masks, and Amo's face lit up with a cheerful grin. She said it was great finally seeing what everyone actually looked like. The support girl, Tom, wasted no time scanning the surroundings and quietly documenting everything about her room, while Rudo stood there wondering how the hell she managed to hoard this much stuff while living in the middle of a damn desert. That's when Amo turned and asked them what they were really here for, so Rudo stepped up and explained that he was looking for someone who could travel between the ground and the sphere. He'd heard whispers that she'd run into one of those people, and he wanted to meet them, but instead of answering, Amo suddenly veered off topic and asked Rudo what kind of girls he liked. Then she flat out admitted she was into guys with a strong scent, saying smell mattered way more than looks, and apparently she had a thing for tough guys who could handle her well. Rudo immediately got the wrong idea, thinking this was her way of making a move on him. That's when Engine jumped in, clearly done with the flirting, and reminded her that they weren't here to talk romance. They needed real info about how to reach the sphere. He called it out, asking for flirty talk in exchange for help was a weird move, but if that's her style, they'd play along for now. That's when Amo snapped. Her whole vibe changed, and she started shaking and shouting that when they first showed up, they acted like they just wanted a friendly chat. But now it seemed like they were only here to milk her for intel. She kept freaking out, yelling that she couldn't stand one-sided relationships and how much she absolutely hated being used. Engine clocks the situation spiraling fast, so he steps in and tries to cool Amo down by saying he's into her. But Amo isn't buying it for a second, and she straight up calls him out, telling him to drop the act and stop pretending. As she gets up, Engine sees that she's a little too exposed and tells her to cover herself up, admitting it's seriously throwing him off. Amo picks up on the vibe real quick and figures Engine's one of those dudes who can't handle how women dress, so she instantly says she's done with him. That's when a surge of energy starts pulsing out from her vital instrument, confirming exactly what Engine suspected: she's a giver just like he guessed. Right then, Rudo catches something strange. Her boots carry the exact same design as the ones on his gloves. But before he can even process that, Amo flashes this wild, twisted smile and gives Delman the order to go after Engine. To everyone's shock, Delman raises his water gun and blasts Engine point blank. Next thing we see, Engine's drenched and laid out on the floor. Delman's frozen in disbelief, staring like he can't even comprehend what just happened. He has no clue why the hell he obeyed her, but Rudo does, so he looks straight at Amo and demands to know what she did. But instead of answering, she just spins the convo right back, asking Rudo once more what type of girl he likes. Everyone goes dead silent. Amo notices the awkward hush and suggests they keep chatting, says it'd help them connect better. But by this point, Rudo's had enough, and there's no getting through to her. That's when Zanka steps up, and he's figured her out. She only responds when people go along with whatever topic she's locked onto. His eyes turn this sharp, cold blue as he tells her he's done with her nonsense. He doesn't care how she got Delman to turn on Engine, but if this is how she plays, then screw the whole mission. If she's treating his boy like that, then he's not hesitating, an enemy or not. He's smashing whatever stands in his way. Hearing that, Amo suddenly breaks into tears, demanding to know how Zanka could say something so cruel when she swears she didn't even do anything wrong. But then her face hardens and she glares at him and silently cues Delman to strike. As Delman lunges at Zanka, he yells at him to wake up, reminds him they're on the same side, and that she's just messing with his head using her powers. But Delman growls back, saying nobody touches Amo, and if anyone dares to hurt her, he'll tear them to pieces. After hearing all that, Tamsi quickly realizes Delman isn't being manipulated. He actually means every damn word, and Tamsi's known him long enough to recognize when he's being genuine. Still, Gris can't wrap his head around any of it. That's when Amo steps in, claiming Delman's had a thing for her for a long time and has basically been one of her biggest admirers for years. But Tamsi doesn't buy it, because Delman he knows wouldn't turn on his own people over a damn crush. Amo then cuts him off, correcting him by saying that this Delman would absolutely throw everyone under the bus if it meant helping her. And with that, Delman starts powering up his vital instrument, clearly prepping for another strike. At this moment, Rudo can't help but think that they only came here to ask a few damn questions, and now they're knee-deep in chaos, so why the hell does everything always have to spiral into a fight? Right then, his vision blurs, and he's pulled into some kind of illusion, facing what appears to be the apostles from the sphere. It's been so long since he last saw them that he's not even sure what to feel. From day one, those apostles had always looked down on the struggling half of this world like they didn't matter. Meanwhile, Amo confidently states there's at least one more person in their ranks who would throw away everything just to win her favor. Then Delman's attacks keep coming, but Tamsi remembers that the vital instrument Delman's using now is directly tied to his past, and it was born from his wish to make his plants thrive and grow strong, which means anything targeted by his water-based weapon would suffer long-lasting consequences, because Delman's vital instrument lets him control the liquid content inside a target. Then he can either force it to soak everything up like a sponge, or completely wreck them if they don't respond in time. With that knowledge, Tamsi is now convinced Delman must have soaked Engine from behind. But when he says that out loud, the others are baffled by how the hell he pulled that off without anyone noticing. So Tamsi explains that Delman's gun can switch between multiple nozzle settings depending on how it's used. This time, he clearly went with the silent spray mode, which is weird as hell because Delman's never once used that function on a person before. That's why Tamsi still can't shake the feeling that something's off, and maybe Delman's not acting entirely on his own. Right then, Rio confidently steps up, thinking she can put an end to this mess. Zanka quickly alerts her not to charge in so recklessly, but she ignores him. Then in an instant, Delman switches to his high-pressure mode and blasts her straight through the wall with a torrent of water. And up until that moment, none of them had truly believed Delman's vital tool could hit with that kind of raw force. Watching it, Amo looks thrilled at just how destructive Delman's power really is, though she casually asks him to tone it down a bit since his last strike literally blew a hole clear through the wall. She starts laughing to herself, and with most of the team lying on the ground beaten, she mocks them, saying all of this could have been avoided if they'd simply sat and talked romance with her quietly, because in her mind talking about love is the real path to peace. Tamsi now realizes that taking Amo down won't be simple because she turned out to be a freaking psycho. Then he glances over at Rudo, only to see him acting strangely, almost dazed. Rudo seems to be hallucinating, convinced he's back inside the sphere again. Zanka notices too and mutters what the hell is happening, but right after, he picks up on a strange scent in the air. It feels oddly familiar, and that's when Amo reveals what's really happening. She says that's how memory works, and that this scent is her doing. It's a nostalgic fragrance meant to drag them back into their sweetest memories with loved ones. As Rudo breathes it in, he's suddenly overwhelmed with visions of his old flame Chewa, and how she abandoned him when she refused to believe he'd been framed for murder. Zanka sees the weight of that memory crushing him, and realizes Amo is targeting Rudo now, same way she did with Delman. But instead of thinking it's mind control or betrayal, Zanka assumes she's trying to help Rudo remember something by triggering these memories. That's when Amo snaps at him, saying that's a stupid take, and she doesn't show anyone anything. She just crafts scents that make people drown in their memories by themselves. Amo begins running her mouth a bit too much and casually mentions that the scents she produces can vary from person to person. But one thing is consistent: anyone who breathes them in will instantly feel the need to safeguard her. The second that slips out, Alma realizes she may have gone a bit too far and accidentally revealed a critical detail about how her power works. And the moment they hear that, Zanka and Tamzi quickly put the pieces together. It means that if they breathe in the scent she's spreading, their minds will twist it into false affection, making them believe they're in love with her and forcing them to guard her as though their own lives were tied to hers. With that realization, the two quickly pull their masks back on and prepare to strike, now that they've cracked the secret behind her influence. At the same time, Ruda remains locked inside the vision she trapped him in. He can't understand why feelings for Chaiwa keep overwhelming him, especially since she abandoned him when he needed her the most. Then his eyes lock forward and he sees the apostles trying to harm Chua. But none of it is real, it's only Amo twisting his mind, so he'll fight to protect her. Then as Zanka and Tamzi launch their attack on Amo, Rudo suddenly leaps between them, blocking their strike. Still under her influence, he believes they're the apostles from his vision, and he's ready to fight to protect Chewa. With a sharp glare, he tells them that he's no longer that powerless kid they used to know. He's grown and now he's strong enough to take them both on. But it's not just Rudo. Every other cleaner in the group, except for Zanka and Tamzi, is already under the same spell. Their eyes glaze over with resolve, and each one declares they'll lay down their lives if that's what it takes to shield Ono. Seeing the situation spiral completely out of control, Zanka and Tamzi stand back to back. They exchange a look, both realizing they seriously underestimated how deep this mental trap goes. They're surrounded and badly outnumbered, so Tamzi takes a deep breath and activates his vital instrument, muttering that he never thought he'd end up using it against his own teammates. But at this point, he has no other option. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the recap and are excited for the next episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our daily recaps.